haunted card. The Mark Jackson basketball card from 1990 to 1991 looks pretty normal at first glance. Just a clean action shot of a Knicks guard doing his thing on the court. But way down in the corner, just next to his hip, are two familiar faces sitting courtside, Lyle and Eric Menendez. Yep, the same brothers who unalived their parents in Beverly Hills in August of 1989. And right after the killings, they started spending wildly. Expensive cars, designer clothes, and front row seats at Knicks games. The photo for that card had to have been snapped sometime between the unaliving and their arrests, which means the brothers were literally just chilling courtside while the investigation was ongoing. Nobody noticed the background cameos for decades. It wasn't until around 2018 when a crime writer named Steven Zarantz was digging through basketball memorabilia that he spotted them. He knew they had attended games, but still, finding them frozen in cardboard forever? That's wild. Once people realized what was going on, the card exploded in value. Some listings hit over $1,000, and sellers even tried to get the brothers to autograph copies from prison. The card was so controversial that auction sites like eBay pulled listings just for mentioning the Menendez name. Some collectors call it the Menendez card now, and the combo of true crime and basketball history gives it this strange, infamous energy. The story's even weirder because some photo archives don't include that image at all, making the card feel like the last trace of a bizarre moment that slipped through the cracks. Lebronto. It started with one line on an ESPN broadcast during the 2018 Eastern Conference semifinal. As LeBron James tore through Toronto's defense in Game 2, Mark Jones dropped the line, "We'll be back to Lebronto for the fourth quarter after this." That was it. The name exploded. LeBron plus Toronto. Lebronto. Fans ran with it. Social media turned it into a full-blown nickname that stuck like glue to every Cavaliers and Raptors matchup after. But the reason it hit so hard, LeBron kept dismantling Toronto's playoff hopes like it was part of his warm-up routine. In 2016, Cleveland beat them 4-2. Then in 2017, a clean sweep, 4-0. LeBron was putting up around 36 points per game in that series. And just when it couldn't get worse, the Cavaliers did it again in 2018, another sweep. In Game 2 alone, LeBron finished with 43 points, 14 assists, and 8 rebounds in only 3 quarters. By the end of that run, the numbers told the whole story. LeBron had a 12-2 playoff record over Toronto from 2016 through 2018. Toronto's front office noticed too. DeMar got traded. Kawhi Leonard came in. Head coach Dwayne Casey, who had just won Coach of the Year, got let go. The nickname worked because it felt true. Every time LeBron played Toronto, it didn't feel like a matchup. It felt like an event that had already been decided. And the name Lebronto gave fans the perfect way to describe it. Every time the Cavaliers saw the Raptors on the schedule, people were already dusting off the hashtag Phantom Quadruple Double. On March 3rd, 1990, Hakeem nearly joined one of the NBA's rarest clubs. That night, against Golden State, his stat line looked ridiculous. 29 points, 18 rebounds, 11 blocks, and 9 assists. Just one dime away from a quadruple double. After the game, the Rockets weren't ready to let it go. Head coach Don Chaney and media director Jay Goldberg pulled out the game tape and thought they found it. A first quarter assist to Buck Johnson that somehow didn't make the box score. The Rockets submitted a revised version, bumping Hakeem up to 10 assists and into elite territory. For a short time, it was real. Then the league stepped in. Rod Thorne, the NBA's stats chief at the time, reviewed the footage himself. He didn't buy it. He reversed the change, saying a milestone wasn't enough reason to rewrite official stats after the fact. And just like that, the box score snapped back. Hakeem with 9 assists, no quadruple double. Chaney wasn't thrilled. He joked that their idea of an assist clearly didn't match the league's. And honestly, back then, stat keeping wasn't as automated or precise. Assists and blocks came down to human judgment more than fans realized. Some even hinted later that certain stars got a little more wiggle room with stat crews, though nothing was confirmed. The irony, just a few weeks later, Hakeem did it anyway. On March 29th against Milwaukee, he went for 16 boards, 11 blocks, and 10 assists, this time with no controversy. But that phantom quad still lives on, not because it happened, but because it almost did, and the whole thing turned into one of the NBA's most famous what-ifs. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, tooth loss tantrum. On January 20th, 2020, during a game between Detroit and Washington, Andre Drummond got popped in the face. Mid-rebound scramble, Thomas Bryant of the Wizards swung an elbow that connected hard. The result? Drummond lost a tooth right there on the court. He grabbed his mouth, blood visible, and headed toward the bench while the medical crew came in to help. But before he even made it off the floor, Drummond decided the furniture needed to feel his pain. As he passed by the bench area, he kicked a chair right out of his way. Cameras caught the whole thing, and it didn't take long before that moment hit media circuits like wildfire. It became one of those clips that lives forever in NBA highlight montages. Drummond wasn't exactly quiet afterward. He went on Twitter and dropped a line that said, "If the roles were reversed, I'd be ejected and probably suspended. Sad. I'm good though, thanks to everyone who was concerned." That tweet echoed the frustration he was clearly carrying about the hit, the no call, and probably a little bit about Detroit's whole situation at the time. The Pistons were already a mess that season. Drummond was in trade rumors almost weekly, and this added even more heat. The story wasn't just about a tooth flying across the court. It symbolized a star player stuck in a losing season, trying to keep it together while the chaos stacked up. Media coverage locked in on how strange it all looked. A 7-footer taking a shot to the face, losing a tooth, bleeding, and then going full WWE on a sideline chair. No foul was called. No fine came down. But the footage? It's definitely going to be replayed forever. Coke addiction. Back when Nikola Jokic was still hooping in Serbia, his biggest rival might have been a soda bottle. He said in multiple interviews that he used to drink 2 to 3 liters of Coca-Cola a day. Sometimes he even called it a gallon. That's not just sipping after a workout. That's practically training with Coke in the water bottle. He told one outlet it was glass after glass, especially after practice. Not Pepsi. Never Pepsi. Just Coke. But at some point, everything changed. He says his last Coke was on the flight to Denver, the one that took him to the NBA. That's when he quit cold turkey. According to him, he hasn't touched a can or bottle since. No withdrawal, no headaches, nothing. He actually said it felt good to stop, and the timing checks out too. In one interview from 2016, he said it had already been a year and a half since his last sip. The numbers he gives jump around a little, depending on the interview. Sometimes it's 2 liters, sometimes 3, sometimes a gallon. But the core story stays the same. Jokic had a Coca-Cola habit, then he dropped it, just like that. And considering how his conditioning was a question early in his NBA career, people really latched onto this Coke story. It became part of his narrative, the out-of-shape big man who turned into an MVP. But for Jokic, it wasn't some dramatic transformation. He made it sound easy, like it was just time to let it go. Now, the soda story's more myth than mess, and the only thing fizzy in his game is the stat sheet. Con Knupples, 82. In a men's league game in Wisconsin, Knuppel lit it up for 82 points. Yeah, 82. Not a high school game, not college, just a local men's league run by his dad. The setup was already a little off script. Teams had 6 players instead of 5, and the quarters were full NBA length. That's 48 minutes of running around and torching adult defenders who probably just got off work. The game had official stats, but this wasn't some broadcasted showdown. No cameras, no footage, just buckets, and apparently a whole crowd of eyewitnesses who still bring it up. Knoopel even joked that it was an 82 piece, like he just placed an order at the drive-thru. The interviewer pointed out he technically beat Kobe's famous 81-point game by 1. Knoopel didn't lean into it though. He gave a casual might have been and kept it humble. He made it clear this wasn't some Jordan flu game moment. It was just a wild night in a Milwaukee gym. When asked if he'd ever do something like that in the NBA, he didn't even blink. Number, no shot, not a chance. Not a chance. It was straight honesty. Still, how many players heading into the draft can say they've scored 82 in any setting? Not many. Whether or not it ever happens again, it's part of his story now. One of those quirky feats that scouts will mention, fans will Google, and friends probably won't stop bringing up. No tape, no trophy. Just a guy from Milwaukee who once put up a number that'll follow him for the rest of his career. Jim Brown's draft day detour. Before he was breaking tackles in Cleveland, Jim Brown was breaking records at Syracuse, and not just in football. The man was a 4-sport varsity letterman: football, lacrosse, basketball, and track. He didn't just dabble either. In lacrosse, he scored 43 goals in 10 games during the 1957 season and ended up tying for the National League. First team All-American. In football, he once ran for 197 yards and 6 touchdowns in one game. And yeah, he even played on the Syracuse basketball team and earned a varsity letter. But here's the twist. In the 1957 NBA draft, the Syracuse Nationals took Brown in the 9th round, 68th overall. The plan? Get the hometown multi-sport machine onto the hardwood full-time. He said no thanks. Instead, he entered the NFL draft that same year, and the Cleveland Browns took him 6th overall. Good call. In the NFL, he led the league in rushing in 8 of his 9 seasons. He scored 106 touchdowns. He never missed a single game, ever. And he walked away with 3 MVP trophies. So while he never suited up for an NBA team, his name still lives on the draft board forever. It's wild to think about. One of the greatest football players in history could have gone pro in basketball, or lacrosse, or track. Jim Brown had options. He just happened to choose the one that made him a legend. JBA experiment. After turning every press conference into a headline and building Big Baller brand into a household name, LeVar Ball went one step further. On December 20th, 2017, he announced the Junior Basketball Association, a full league funded by a Big Baller brand created as a paid alternative to college basketball. No NCCA, no scholarships, just high school grads getting paid to play. The pitch was bold. Players would earn $3,000 per month, plus a cut of jersey sales. Teams would wear Big Baller brand shoes and uniform. Tryouts were held across the country. LaMelo Ball joined early. LiAngelo joined later. 8 teams were formed in major cities, and games were played with 10-man rosters and full league branding. The regular season had 8 games per team, followed by playoffs. The Los Angeles Ballers won it all in the league's only season. After that, the whole thing went global. Team JBAUSA toured internationally, facing pro squads overseas. The games were streamed live on Facebook Watch. But the JBA wasn't just hoops. It was spectacle, and that came with problems. Some players said they never got fully paid. Others talked about travel issues, small rosters, and unclear contracts. Critics claimed the league felt more like a platform to spotlight the Ball family than a serious launchpad for other prospects. Attendance was low, ticket prices were high, top recruits stayed away. By the end of 2018, the league went quiet. No new season ever launched. It never officially shut down, but the silence said enough. Still, for 1 year, LeVar Ball built a basketball league from scratch and put his sons at the center of it. The JBA was real, brief, loud, and pure Big Baller. Ben Simmons versus the Knicks. At one point, Ben Simmons had a spotless record against New York. 15 wins, 0 losses. A perfect 15-0. That streak made him a walking headache for Knicks fans. Even without flashy scoring nights, he just kept winning. But that run eventually cracked. His record now sits at 15-3 against the Knicks. Still dominant, but no longer untouchable. The 15-0 start though, that was real. It stood for years, with fans online turning it into a stat meme every time the Knicks were on the schedule. And then there's the other twist. His first ever made three-pointer came against, who else? The Knicks. It happened on November 20th, 2019, game number 172 of his NBA career. That's 2 full seasons, plus change, before he finally hit one from beyond the arc. And he made it count, 18 points, 13 assists, and the Sixers walked away with a win, 109-104. So the Knicks were the opponent for 2 very different Ben Simmons moments. The beginning of a long, unbeaten run, and the end of a longer wait for a 3. 2 milestones, both on their heads. For all the criticism Simmons gets, those moments still show up in trivia night. The guy who started 15-0 against one franchise, and the guy who finally drained a 3 against that same team. Coincidence or curse? Either way, New York keeps ending up on the wrong side of Simmons' highlight reel. Luka stops for a fan whistle. In Game 3 of the 2025 playoffs, with the Lakers facing the Timberwolves, things took a weird turn. Midway through the fourth quarter, about 8.5 minutes left, Luka seemed to just stop during a transition play. Minnesota's Jaden McDaniels grabbed a loose ball and was sprinting toward the rim. Luka chased him, then suddenly froze up, letting McDaniels finish the dunk. The Timberwolves padded their lead, and the Lakers were left stunned. The reason? Luka thought he heard a whistle, not from the refs, but from the stands. According to reports, multiple Lakers, including bench guard Jordan Goodwin, said they heard whistling sounds from fans more than once during the second half. 3, maybe 4 times. Luka was even caught on mic shouting, "There's a whistle," in real time. And right after that dunk, the arena's public address announcer got on the mic to warn the crowd. Any fan using a whistle would be removed immediately. It wasn't just a one-off complaint. The Lakers organization said post-game that whistles from the stands had been an issue all second half. Whistles are banned in NBA arenas for this exact reason. They cause confusion, can mimic official calls, and ruin game flow. In this case, it cost the Lakers an easy 2 points the other way. Some fans and analysts called it blatant interference. Others saw it as home court chaos, working exactly the way fans hope it will. Either way, it added fuel to the narrative. A playoff game decided in part by a fan and a whistle. Only in the NBA, three-peat trademark. Pat Riley didn't just win titles. He trademarked the phrase that comes with them. Back in 1988, as the Lakers were chasing a 3rd straight championship, a company called PDP Paperone de Paperoni filed to trademark the term three-peat. That filing covered shirts, jackets, hats, the merch lane. Not long after, the rights were transferred to Riley's own company, Riles & Company. By 1989, The three-peat trademark was officially his. And Riley didn't stop there. Over the years, his company registered several versions, three-peat, 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 across categories like apparel, backpacks, even jewelry. While one early registration was canceled in 2012 for paperwork reasons, newer filings are still active and cover a wide chunk of merchandise types. That move paid off. When the Chicago Bulls pulled off their first three-peat in 1993, Riley's company made around $300,000 in royalties. More came in when the Bulls repeated the feat in 1998. Then the Yankees did it in baseball from 1998 to 2000. Riley and his company were collecting checks each time. Even recently, when the Kansas City Chiefs were chasing a Super Bowl three-peat, Riley had licensing deals in place, just in case. But here's the twist. He doesn't pocket the cash. Riley funnels the proceeds into charity. Reports say licensing earnings go to military-focused groups like the Special Operations Warrior Foundation and the Pat Riley Family Foundation. So while Riley never coined three-peat, he locked it up legally and turned it into a royalty stream. And instead of buying yachts, he's been writing checks for causes that matter. Few coaches win with words. Pat Riley made it a business. Courtside haircut. On March 25th, 2022, YouTuber Gideon pulled off one of the most bizarre NBA stunts in recent memory. While sitting courtside at a Timberwolves game, he decided it was the perfect time for a fresh cut. Not before tip-off, not during halftime. In the fourth quarter, with cameras rolling and the Jumbotron catching every second, Gideon had a barber kneel next to his seat and start trimming him up right in front of the act. Commentators called it out mid-broadcast. Fans around him started pulling out their phones. Timberwolves guard Anthony Edwards even shot a glance over that said everything without saying a word. Gideon just sat there, completely unfazed, cape on, like he was at the shop and not 3 feet from an NBA bench. Later, he confirmed the whole thing would be part of a new video on his channel. The stunt exploded on social media, with clips circulating everywhere. But for Gideon, this was hardly his first headline. He'd already built a rep for doing outrageous stuff at live sporting events. And while this courtside moment became one of his most viral, it also became part of a larger pattern. By 2023, the league had enough. Gideon was banned indefinitely from attending NBA and WNBA games after repeated incidents. So yeah, you could say the haircut cost more than just the price of the fade. It became one of those classic sports moments people point to when they say, remember when that YouTuber got a haircut mid-game? Because in the NBA, there are highlight dunks. And then there's Gideon getting lined up at center court, called his shot. Larry Bird wasn't just cold-blooded with the jumper. He was cold-blooded before the jumper even left his hand. There's a whole set of stories passed around like basketball folklore where Bird didn't just trash talk, he straight up gave defenders the script and then stuck to it. One time against the Seattle Supersonics, Xavier McDaniel was guarding him down the stretch. Bird walked up and said, "I'm gonna get the ball right here. Fake left, shoot right, and it's going in." McDaniel just nodded. Bird did exactly that, cash. And as he jogged back, he added, "Damn, I didn't mean to leave 2 seconds on the clock." Then there's the Rainbow, Trainer's Lap story. He was playing the Hawks. Before even catching the ball, Bird shouted to the bench, "Rainbow, Trainer's Lap, who wants it?" Then he rose, launched a ridiculous high arcing three, and sure enough, it dropped. Some say it actually landed near the trainer's lap on the sideline. He didn't just hit game winners, he gave them previews. These aren't whispered rumors either. They've been retold in interviews, documentaries, and even Bird's Wikipedia page cites his habit of telling defenders how he was going to beat them. He weaponized confidence. Most guys talk trash after a bucket. Bird talked before, and when he said, "I'm gonna shoot it from here," you might as well start running back on offense, because he was right. Every time. Gas guzzler. While most NBA stars roll up in six-figure luxury rides, Kawhi Leonard showed up in a '97 Chevy Tahoe, and not some museum-quality classic. This thing was beat up. It had a nickname too, Gas Guzzler. He drove it during his time with the Spurs, years after making millions. When reporters asked him about it, Kawhi gave a shrug and said, "It runs, and it's paid off. That's it. No flex, no upgrades. Just the same truck he'd had since high school, patched up and still moving." GQ, ESPN, CBS Sports, and Bleacher Report all cited that same quote. And yeah, it came straight from a Lee Jenkins profile. While most rookies blow their first check on cars with butterfly doors, Kawhi was chilling in his dusty Tahoe with the windows rolled down and the odometer probably laughing. It became part of the Kawhi myth, the MVP who didn't care about flash, didn't do commercials, and didn't need a Bentley to pull up to practice. Even when he had endorsements and hardware, finals MVPs, defensive player awards, he kept the Tahoe. No bragging, no upgrades, just, it runs. That line sums him up better than any press conference ever could. And in a league built on showmanship, the guy who stayed loyal to a 97 truck became a legend in his own lane, player coach champion. In 1966, Bill Russell wasn't just anchoring the Celtics' defense, he was handed the clipboard too. When Red Auerbach retired, the Celtics made Russell their new head coach. That move made him the first black head coach in NBA history. But here's where it gets wild. Russell didn't stop playing. He became a full-on player coach. For 3 seasons, from 1966 to 1969, he ran the team from the bench and from the paint. And he didn't just survive it, he won. Twice. In 1968, Russell led the Celtics to another title. And in 1969, he did it again. That second one was his final season. 11 rings as a player, but 2 of those came while also being the head coach. No one else in NBA history has done that. No one. Today we talk about Russell's rings, his shot blocking, his rivalry with Wilt, and his civil rights legacy. But somehow, this part, the part where he outcoached the league while still guarding the best player on the floor, that's faded into the background. Player-coach championships don't happen anymore. The role doesn't even exist now. But Russell pulled it off at age 32 and walked away with one of the most absurd resumes basketball's ever seen. He wasn't just a leader in the huddle, he was the huddle. Then he grabbed the rebound, made the outlet pass, and won the title too. Parrish punches, lame beer. In Game 5 of the 1987 Eastern Conference playoffs, the Celtics and Pistons rivalry hit a boiling point. Boston's Robert Parrish and Detroit's Bill Laimbeer were locked in a physical battle under the rim when Laimbeer allegedly elbowed Parrish in the face during a rebound tussle. Parrish responded with a flurry of punches, clean, visible shots that sent Laimbeer down to the hardwood. Here's the wild part. The referees didn't call anything. No ejection, no technical, nothing. Parrish stayed in the game. The incident aired on national TV, but somehow slipped by the whistle. That didn't last long. The league reviewed the tape and hit Parrish with a 1-game suspension and a $7,500 fine. At the time, NBA officials made it clear fighting had no place in the league, and future suspensions would be handed out to set a precedent. Parrish had re-injured his ankle during that same game and likely wouldn't have played the next one anyway, but the league made sure he was ruled ineligible regardless. Still, the moment stuck. In Celtics lore, Parrish standing up to Laimbeer, who was infamous for playing rough and riling opponents, is seen as a badge of pride. Red Auerbach even defended Parrish afterward, saying he understood the fire of that rivalry. Fans to this day point to that punch as a turning point in the Boston-Detroit War. In a league where rivalries used to feel personal, Parrish's punch became a lasting symbol of playoff intensity. No flop, no reviews, just fists, fury, and 4 quarters of war. O'Leary buys the Grail. In 2025, Kevin O'Leary dropped nearly $13 million. Not on a car, not on a mansion, on a single trading card. But this wasn't just any card. It was a one-of-one from the 2007 to 2008 Upper Deck Exquisite Collection. Dual Logo Man autograph, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. 1 card, 2 legends, both signatures, both jersey patches. The card's grade? A 6 out of 10 from PSA. But O'Leary didn't flinch. He bought it alongside 2 other investors, calling it a piece unique, a one-of-a-kind asset, like owning a Warhol or a Pollock. He doesn't see it as sports memorabilia. He sees it as art, as investment, as history. And that price tag, $12.932 million, didn't come out of nowhere. The card had traded hands years earlier for less than $75,000. That jump? O'Leary calls it the natural evolution of a maturing collectibles market, just like fine art, except with sneakers and hardwood. He made it clear the card's not going back on the market. He said, that piece is off the market forever, at least my forever. For him, this isn't about flipping or flexing. It's about locking down a cultural artifact with value that lives outside the auction block. In his view, this card isn't just for fans, it's for collectors, museums, institutions. It's a physical icon of the Jordan-Kobe era, fused into a single slab. O'Leary didn't just buy a card. He planted a flag at the intersection of sports and legacy. And according to him, it's staying planted. Middle finger ring. After winning the 2004 NBA championship with the Detroit Pistons, Rasheed Wallace reportedly had his ring resized. Not for his ring finger, but for his middle finger. That's right. He took it to a jeweler and had the band altered, just so he could wear it on the hand signal that says everything without saying a word. According to multiple reports, this wasn't some accidental sizing error. It was deliberate. Wallace, known for his fiery temper, his tech count, and his habit of talking back to anyone in stripes, wanted the ring to sit front and center when he flipped someone off. The message, say something now. And with a championship on that finger, it hit different. Bro Bible and other trivia outlets say the move was completely on brand. Rasheed didn't just talk trash, he wore it. The image of him raising that finger with a glimmering Pistons ring on it fits right into the mythology of a player who played angry and proud. No filter, no apologies, no traditional ring finger ceremony. Whether he used it that way in practice or just wanted the option, it adds another layer to Rasheed's legacy. He didn't just win, he made sure his championship jewelry could do the talking loud and clear. 42-year gap. Vince Carter's career didn't just span decades, it spanned generations. He played against Rick Mahorn, born in 1958, and Kobe White, born in 2000. That's a 42-year age gap between opponents. The timeline sounds impossible, but the box scores don't lie. Carter and Mahorn faced off twice in the late 90s. Mahorn was winding down his career, and Carter was just getting started. Mahorn's teams won both games, and Carter still put up respectable numbers. 9 points, 4.5 boards, a couple assists. Mahorn chipped in with a quiet 2 points and 1 rebound average in those matchups. But it happened, old school versus new rookie. Then fast forward over 2 decades. Kobe White entered the league in 2019. Vince Carter somehow was still lacing them up. They shared the court, confirming Carter's career officially overlapped with players born after Y2K while having also battled guys from the 50s. That's more than longevity. That's NBA time travel. So yes, Carter played against someone born 42 years before one opponent and another born 42 years after. It's not just a stat. It's a reminder that Vince Carter's career wasn't just long. It was practically eternal. Forgotten Bitcoin found again. Back in 2016, Kevin Durant and his business partner, Rich Kleiman, got into Bitcoin early. Smart move. Not so smart move, they lost access to their Coinbase account. No password, no backup, no crypto. For years, the holdings just sat there, completely untouchable. They tried everything. Kleiman called it user error, basically admitting they just locked themselves out. And this wasn't some small stash. This was Durant-level investment money, trapped behind a login they couldn't remember. Fast forward to September 2025. Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong posted on X, "We got this fixed. Account recovery complete." Just like that, Durant was back in. The company confirmed it, and Kleiman followed up by praising Coinbase's support. After nearly a decade, they were finally able to access the funds. No one said how much Bitcoin was in the account or what it's worth today, but considering when they bought in, the number's probably ridiculous. Coinbase mentioned that they have account recovery tools for situations like this, and this one clearly went through the full process. So yeah, Kevin Durant once got locked out of his crypto wallet for years, and then just casually got it back. If you ever forgot your password and felt dumb, just remember, so did a 2-time finals MVP. One-hand free throws. In December of 2022, Jeremy Sohan did something unusual at the line. He ditched the guide hand and started shooting free throws with just one hand. It happened during a game against the Houston Rockets, and yes, people noticed. Spurs head coach Greg Popovich reportedly suggested the change as an experiment, and Sohan rolled with it. At the time, his mechanics were inconsistent, and the move was about simplifying things. No offhand, no overthinking. Just one hand, one motion, one result, and it actually helped. By the end of his rookie season, Sohan was shooting just under 70% from the line, specifically 69.8%. The following season, that number climbed to 77.1%. That's a solid bump, especially for a second-year player. The one-hand method worked. It became a signature move, drew attention across the league, and delivered better results. In a league where poor free throw shooting can become a headline, Sohan leaned into the weird and found a groove. One hand, all net. Ranked number 1, flag football quarterback. Rajon Rondo is somehow the top-ranked flag football quarterback in America. This whole thing kicked off when Frankie Vision dropped a clip showing Rondo slinging passes like he's been doing it forever, and the caption said it plain as day. He's the number 1 ranked quarterback in the country. After that, it spread fast. Outlets like TalkSport, A Sea of Blue, and even the Times of India ran with it. They weren't just tossing out clickbait either. They highlighted his quarterback roots back in high school and brought up how his NBA passing was basically a tryout reel for flag football. Doc Rivers once called him their version of Tom Brady, which feels a lot less exaggerated now. His court vision, timing, and accuracy have made this leap onto the flag field feel oddly natural. Watching him in those videos, it's not just gimmicky backyard stuff either. He's hitting deep throws, scrambling with control, and standing calm in the pocket like it's a playoff game. People online couldn't get enough. The internet turned it into a whole moment, and flag football pages kept reposting his highlights. Then the wildest part, there's talk he could end up on Team USA when flag football hits the Olympics in 2028. He'd be 39, but that storyline writes itself. A 2-time NBA champ suiting up for gold in a totally different sport? Whether it's hype or not, This story's turned into its own kind of legend, and honestly, I'm all for the chaos. Shaq accepts. Boxing challenge from Charlie Mack. This wild matchup got set in motion after Charlie Mack Alston called out Shaq over a neck chop from more than 10 years ago. According to reports, the whole thing started in Dallas during an autograph signing when Shaq allegedly tried cutting the line. Mack, who used to be Will Smith's bodyguard, apparently wasn't having it and gave him a neck chop to prove the point. Fast forward to now, Mack shows up on Instagram with Damon Feldman from Official Celebrity Boxing and makes the whole challenge public. He dragged up the old story, dropped a fight poster, and gave Shaq a new nickname, Knocked Out. Not the most creative insult, but the internet definitely noticed. Shaq didn't waste any time. He hit the Instagram comments with "I accept, let's do it," then followed that up with a full video response. He told them to name the time and place and hit back with a joke about the neck chop being the reason he talks funny. That's actually kinda gold. The fight's being pushed as a super heavyweight showdown, and it makes sense. Shaq's listed height is 7 feet 1 inch, and during his career, he weighed between 310 and 325 pounds. Max reportedly around 6 feet 6 inches and close to 290 pounds. So this isn't your average celebrity boxing stunt. Official Celebrity Boxing's behind the event, the same group that's previously staged fights with Jose Canseco, Tanya Harding, and Lamar Odom. Shaq accepted the challenge in mid-August 2025, and while there's no date or venue yet, it's officially on. Giannis hints at Knicks via a New York live stream. When Giannis jumped on a live stream with iShowSpeed in early July 2025, nobody expected anything other than some jokes and random chatter. Instead, Knicks fans got a reason to refresh trade rumor threads. While chatting with Speed, Giannis casually dropped a quote that had people reaching for their phones. When someone brought up New York's rough tax situation, Giannis shrugged it off and said, "A lot of people have tried to convince me to go and play there and stuff." No specific team was named, but it didn't take long for Knicks fans to start connecting imaginary dots. He followed it up with a wobbly answer when asked if he's staying in Milwaukee. His words? Probably. We'll see. I love Milwaukee. That's just enough hesitation to light a fire under every blog headline for the next week. Sports Illustrated pointed out that his "a lot of people" comment could mean advisors or agents, maybe even players. The Sun tried to play it down, but even they admitted that his vague delivery leaves the door wide open. Barstool Sports leaned all the way in and made it about fan-made Photoshop edits of Giannis in a Knicks jersey. The New York Post didn't miss the chance to fan the flames either. They highlighted how his tone and history of off-season chatter keep the rumor alive. This isn't even the first time Giannis has been linked to the Knicks, Nets, Heat, or Raptors. Analysts like Shams have hinted he might be open to different futures, even if he's still focused on chasing another title with Milwaukee. All it took was one live stream and a few loose words to flip the trade talk switch again. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Draymond Green versus Jordan Poole. New details leaked. Back in 2021, during a Warriors practice, Draymond Green reportedly told Jordan Poole, "I'll beat you up." That was apparently the spark. What made it even more intense is that Steve Kerr's son, Charlie Kerr, jumped in and told Poole to stand up for himself. That moment laid the foundation for what became one of the most heated internal feuds in recent NBA memory. Poole didn't back down. He fired back with the line that got under Draymond's skin fast. "You're an expensive backpack for 30. Yeah, that's what he allegedly said, referring to Green riding Steph Curry's success. That insult hit deep, and according to reports, it's what pushed things toward boiling over. Later on, during another scrimmage, Draymond reportedly called Poole the B word, not once, repeatedly. Teammates and staff noted it came out in response to what Draymond saw as cocky play and unnecessary fouls from Poole. It was like every bad feeling had been waiting to erupt. Here's the sequence. First, Draymond made the threat during that 2021 practice. Then, Poole hit back with that now infamous backpack line. And finally, during another practice, Draymond started using that insult over and over. Every moment stacked until things exploded. Reports tied all of it to the eventual punch that went viral in 2022. But the tension didn't come out of nowhere. It was years in the making. Each exchange, every jab, verbal and otherwise, built a wall between them. There's no fixing something like that in a locker room. Once respect's gone, it's game over. The punch was just the final punctuation mark. Kobe drops 62 3/4. On December 20th, 2005, Kobe Bryant didn't just light up the scoreboard. He torched the entire Dallas Mavericks squad by himself. Through 3 quarters, Kobe had 62 points. Dallas, only 61. That's not a typo. He single-handedly outscored the entire opposing team. Nobody had ever done that in the shot clock era. The breakdown's insane. 15 in the first, 17 in the second. Then he dropped 30 in the third quarter alone. That third was a franchise record by itself, and he did it all shooting 18 for 31 from the field, 22 for 25 from the line, and 4 made three-pointer. Absolute clinic. The Lakers were up big, so big that Coach Phil Jackson sat him the entire fourth. Assistant coach Brian Shaw asked if Kobe wanted to go back in. Kobe said no. He didn't need more. He'd made his point. It wasn't that night. That's what he told them. And yeah, that game led directly into what would come next. Just over a month later, he dropped 81 on Toronto. That December night wasn't just a hot streak. It was part one of a legendary scoring stretch. Fans still talk about how he did all that in only 32 minutes. It's just ridiculous. Even online, fans can't believe it. One said he had 32 in the first half, then another 30 in the third. 14 games later, he has 63 through 3 and ends with 81. This night was more than a stat. It was Kobe, showing the league exactly what domination looked like. And somehow, he wasn't even done. Tracy McGrady's baseball stint. In February 2014, Tracy McGrady officially made the jump from the hardwood to the pitcher's mound. After retiring from the NBA, he joined the Sugar Land Skeeters, a team in the Atlantic League, to chase his long-held dream of playing professional baseball. He was signed as a pitcher and began working toward a spot in the rotation. During the regular season, McGrady appeared in 4 games. Across 6 2/3 innings, he allowed 4 hits, 5 runs, and issued 10 walks. Notably, he didn't record a single strikeout in any of those outings. Despite the rough stat line, his presence was a major event, drawing attention from across the sports world. That summer, the Atlantic League All-Star Game was held at Constellation Field, McGrady's home turf. As part of the festivities, he entered the home run derby with local little leaguer Will Dolan as his teammate. McGrady didn't hit any home runs, but Dolan delivered in overtime, earning them the win. McGrady then started the All-Star Game itself. He pitched 1 1/3 innings, gave up 1 run on 1 hit, and finally struck out the last batter he faced. That punch-out was his first and only career strikeout in professional baseball. Right after walking off the mound, he announced his retirement from the game. He let the team know that would be his final appearance and expressed thanks for the experience. It was a brief run, but it checked a box on his personal dream list. McGrady's time with the Skeeters may have been short, but it ended with a win. 1 strikeout, 1 Derby trophy, and 1 very satisfied pitcher. Troy Hudson's rap. Back in May 2007, Troy Hudson dropped a rap album called Undrafted under the name T-Hud. He released it through his own label, Hudson Record, also known as Nutty Boys Entertainment. Hudson didn't just lend his voice, he self-produced the whole thing, wrote the lyrics, and handled the business side. It wasn't just a hobby project. He went all in. The album had some serious names attached. He brought in Ray J, 3 6 Mafia, UGK, and even Static Major. With those kinds of features, it seemed like he might actually have something going. But then came the numbers. In its first week, Undrafted sold only 78 copies. Not 78,000, 78 total. Slam magazine couldn't believe it. Their words? 78 copies. That's god-awful. Critics were not kind. DJ Booth threw him straight into the worst NBA Rappers Hall of Fame. Bleacher Report said the album had some okay beats, but couldn't get past the brutal sales. Rap Reviews offered a more balanced take, giving him credit for trying, even calling the album surprisingly solid. But they also said it leaned hard into generic gangster cliches. It all came across like a vanity project, an NBA player trying to prove he could be more than just an athlete. But the album's reception buried that message. Pop culture rankings always stick him near the bottom when listing athletes who tried to make music. In the end, Undrafted became more of a punchline than a pivot. Big features, big ambitions, and a painfully small audience. That 78 figure became the legacy. And for Troy Hudson, the mic didn't quite return the favor. 107-point half by the Phoenix Suns. On November 10th, 1990, the Phoenix Suns hosted the Denver Nuggets and unleashed one of the most ridiculous scoring explosions in league history. By halftime, the Suns had racked up 107 points. Yes, in just 2 quarters. The Nuggets had 67. That's a 40-point gap at the break. And the total combined points, 174, set another league record for most in a half. This game wasn't some random outburst either. It was a full-on track meet. The Suns scored at will, slicing through Denver's defense like it wasn't even there. And here's the kicker. They did it without hitting a single three-pointer. Not one. All 107 came from twos, free throws, and relentless tempo. The Nuggets, coached by Paul Westhead, were known for running fast, but they had no answer for what Phoenix brought that night. By the time it was over, the final score was 173 to 143. That tied the record at the time for most points scored in a regulation game, matching the Boston Celtics total from 1959. And as of 2025, the 107 points scored in one half still stands as the NBA's all-time record. The fact that it happened without any threes makes it even more unbelievable in today's era. Every single bucket came the hard way. That night turned into one of the wildest scoring showcases the league's ever seen. Phoenix didn't just run up the score. They sprinted into the record books and left the Nuggets breathless. And to make things even better, I've teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook, the go-to app for every basketball fan who loves being part of the action. The season's heating up, and there's no better time to jump in. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. That means you can watch every dunk, block, and buzzer beater while your bets play out live. Again, new customers bet $5 and get 3 months of League Pass on us, and $300 if your bet wins, paid in bonus bets. Just sign up with promo code HOOPSEXPLAINED. Claim the offer. And if you love the thrill of live betting, DraftKings has you covered. Bet on player props and in-progress games as they happen. Want an even bigger payout? Try same-game parlays and stack those picks. So what are you waiting for? Download DraftKings Sportsbook, sign up using promo code HOOPSEXPLAINED, and let the games begin. The crown is yours. 2015 NBA Draft, the last 12 carnage. The final stretch of the 2015 NBA Draft might be one of the most quietly disastrous endings to a draft night ever. Picks 49 through 60, practically a black hole. Out of those last 12 players selected, only one ever appeared in an NBA game. Let's break it down. That year's draft featured 60 total picks. 44 players from that group eventually saw the court. But when you zoom in on the bottom 12, picks 49 through 60, it's a graveyard. 11 of those 12 guys never played a single second in an NBA game. Nothing. No garbage time, no injury sub, not even a ceremonial check-in. Just nothing. The lone exception, Brandon Dawson. He was taken 56th overall out of Michigan State, selected by the Pelicans, then traded to the Clip. He did make his NBA debut and recorded actual stats in real games, so he officially counts. Every other name in that stretch, from Luka Mitrovic at pick 60 to the string of international flyers and second-round gambles in between, vanished into obscurity. The contrast is wild. One guy from Michigan State sneaks into the league, while 11 others never crack a roster. For all the talk about second-round steals, this was a complete collapse. Usually, you'll get a couple late bloomers or overseas prospects who come over later. Not here. That 12-pick run became one of the most unproductive draft chunks in modern NBA history. One survivor out of 12. If you were looking for a dark horse to make it in that group, your only hope was Brandon Dawson, and even he barely made it past the starting line. Gene Conley wins in both leagues. Gene Conley did what no other athlete ever has. He won championships in both the NBA and Major League Baseball. He pitched his way to a World Series title with the Milwaukee Braves in 1957, then turned around and grabbed 3 straight NBA championships with the Boston Celtics from 1959 to 1961. One man, 2 sports, 4 rings. His baseball career stretched across 11 seasons. He suited up for the Boston and Milwaukee Braves, the Philadelphia Phillies, and the Boston Red Sox. On the mound, Conley logged 91 wins, 96 losses, and an earned run average of 3.82. He struck out 888 batters in over 1,500 innings and was selected to multiple All-Star games, including a strong showing in 1955. He didn't just dabble in basketball either. Drafted in the 10th round by the Celtics in 1952, Conley played parts of 6 NBA seasons. After focusing on baseball early, he returned to the hardwood in the 1958-59 season, carving out a role as a forward center. He helped the Celtics go on their dominant run, contributing meaningful minutes during their title streak. Among all 4 major pro leagues in the United States, only Conley pulled this off, winning both an NBA title and a World Series. Otto Graham won titles in football and basketball, but not at the pro level in both. Conley's rare versatility places him in a league of his own, making him one of the most unique multi-sport legends in American sports history. Ramon Sessions versus Chris Paul versus Steve Nash. This one's a stat head jaw drop. Ramon Sessions, the solid but mostly unheralded point guard, quietly posted career highs that top both Chris Paul and Steve Nash, at least in one surprising category. and partially in another. Let's talk scoring first. Sessions dropped 44 points on February 7th, 2009 against Detroit. That tops Chris Paul's career high of 43, which he reached twice. Sneaking ahead of Paul in scoring output isn't something you'd expect from a guy who bounced around 9 NBA teams. Now for assists. This is where Sessions really outdid both legends. He dished out 24 assists on April 14th, 2008 against the Bulls. That's more than Chris Paul's career high of 21, and also more than Nash's 22. So Sessions has the edge in playmaking, at least in the one-game peak category. Here's the scoreboard. In points, Sessions beats Paul. In assists, he beats both. It doesn't mean he had the same impact or legacy, but if you're going off raw single-game highs, Sessions has a quirky claim to fame. It's a reminder that even role players can have historic nights. Tucked into the weird corners of NBA box score history, Lil B curses James Harden during the 2015 Western Conference Finals. Rapper Lil B, known as the Bass God, called out James Harden for using the cooking dance celebration without credit. Lil B had popularized the move years earlier, and after a few warnings on social media, when ignored, he officially placed what he called the Bass God curse on Harden. The announcement came on May 24th, 2015, through a TMZ interview, where Lil B declared Harden cursed for the rest of the playoffs and beyond. Days later, Game 5 of the series took place at Oracle Arena, and Lil B showed up in person. That same night, Harden committed 13 turnovers, the most ever in a single NBA playoff game. Fans immediately pointed to the curse. The timing and the stat line fueled the story. Harden had ignored Lil B's demand for credit, and now he was paying the price. A few weeks later, on June 13th, Lil B tweeted that he had lifted the curse, saying Harden might be dealing with things deeper than basketball, but that wasn't the official end. Over 2 years passed before Lil B formally lifted the curse on live television. On June 4th, 2017, during an episode of ESPN's First Take, he confirmed it was over. Here's the timeline. May 24th, the curse was placed. Game 5, Harden sets a turnover record. June 13th, there's a soft lift via Twitter. And finally, June 4th, 2017, the Bass God curse is publicly ended. Whether you believe in the curse or not, the events lined up in a way that made this one of the weirdest side plots in playoff history. Knicks signed Clyde Frazier in 1997 prank. On April 1st, 1997, the New York Knicks pulled off one of the greatest April Fool's stunts in NBA history. They announced that 52-year-old Walt Clyde Frazier was coming out of retirement to rejoin the team on a 10-day contract. According to the fake report, he'd be replacing backup guard Scott Brooks on the active roster. The whole thing was staged with complete buy-in from the organization, including MSG Networks and the team's broadcast crew. Clyde himself played the part perfectly. In a fake interview, he said he was just fooling around at practice when assistant coach Ernie Grunfeld noticed his moves and encouraged him to make a comeback. Meanwhile, Mike Breen acted stunned and heartbroken, claiming Clyde never told him a word. Even Cleveland's head coach Mike Fratello pretended to be worried about facing Frazier again. And then there was Scott Brooks, supposedly the cut player, who gave the most dramatic fake response of all. He said, "The guy's old. What can he bring to the team that I can't do?" He even joked about hoping to get picked up somewhere else just to prove the Knicks had made a mistake. The prank was so detailed, it got picked up as real news. Fans thought Clyde was really suiting up again. But by the time the game started that night, the joke was revealed. No contract, no comeback, just a perfect bit of theater. It was bold, hilarious, and full of nostalgia. For one night, the Knicks made everyone believe Clyde was about to step on the court again. And that's why it's still remembered decades later. Wilkins Draft Day Trade. On June 29th, 1982, the Utah Jazz selected Dominique Wilkins with the 3rd overall pick in the NBA draft. He had just finished dominating at the University of Georgia and looked like a sure future star. But there was a problem. Wilkins didn't want to play in Utah. The team wanted him to play power forward, and he had no interest in the fit or the location. Then came the trade. On September 2nd, the Jazz shipped Wilkins to the Atlanta Hawks. In return, they got veteran scorers John Drew and Freeman Williams, along with $1 million in cash. At the time, Utah was struggling financially and couldn't afford Wilkins' contract demands. What followed was one of the most lopsided trades in NBA history. Wilkins exploded in Atlanta. He became the face of the franchise, earning 9 All-Star selections, a scoring title in 1985-86, and 2 Slam Dunk Contest crowns. For 10 straight seasons, he averaged more than 25 points per game and became known as one of the most electrifying scorers the league had ever seen. Meanwhile, the Jazz got short-term production at best. John Drew played 3 seasons in Utah, but never matched his earlier All-Star form. Freeman Williams barely made a dent, appearing in fewer than 30 games before exiting the league. So here's the final score. The Hawks got a franchise icon, a Hall of Fame forward, and over a decade of all-NBA production. The Jazz got 2 role players and some cash. The deal didn't just reshape 2 franchises, it became a textbook example of how a draft pick and a player's preferences can alter basketball history. David Blatt trolls, Cavs fail. In January 2018, David Blatt, coaching Team Europe in the Turkish Basketball Super League All-Star Game, couldn't help taking a shot at his former team. The Cleveland Cavaliers had just given up 148 points in a blowout loss to the Thunder. During pre-game media coverage, Blatt joked, "I hope we don't give up as many points as the Cavs did last night." And then karma showed up on a scoreboard. By the time the All-Star Game was over, Team Europe had surrendered 151 points, 3 more than the Cavs. Final score, Team Asia 151, Team Europe 142. The stat line didn't just make Blatt's joke age badly, it made it instantly ironic. SB Nation nailed the mood with their post-game headline, "If you're out here clowning, you're also eligible to be clowned." It was one of those moments where the punchline wrote itself. The whole thing went viral, not just because of the timing, but because it happened in an all-star game. Not exactly where you'd expect a dramatic backfire. Blatt's jab at Cleveland turned into a full-on boomerang. A former NBA coach mocked his old team for defensive collapse, then got torched harder in a glorified exhibition. So here's the summary. 1 troll comment, 1 historic defensive meltdown, and 1 giant helping of poetic justice. In sports, there's nothing more satisfying than a roast that flips itself mid-sentence. Juwan Howard's voided contract changes the Heat's path. In the summer of 1996, Howard was set to make history. After receiving an $89 million offer from the Washington Bullets, the Miami Heat countered with a deal worth between $98 and $101 million, what would have been the league's first 9-figure contract. Howard agreed to the Heat's offer, but on July 31st, the NBA voided the deal. The league cited salary cap violations. Miami had failed to properly account for bonuses to Tim Hardaway and PJ Brown, and they'd also committed to re-signing Alonzo Mourning. All those numbers pushed them over the limit. The Heat pushed back, publicly disputed the ruling, and even threatened arbitration, but they ultimately backed off, likely to avoid league penalties, which could have included a multi-million-dollar fine or a suspension for Pat Riley. With the contract voided, Howard re-signed with the Bullets for 7 years, $105 million, becoming the first player in league history to officially pass the $100 million mark. With Howard off the board, Miami pivoted fast. They locked in PJ Brown, who became a vital defensive anchor. They added Dan Madrill for shooting and perimeter D. And during the season, they picked up Isaac Austin, a solid front court contributor. The new mix worked. The Heat went 61-21, best record in franchise history at the time, and reached the Eastern Conference Finals. So while Miami lost the Howard sweepstakes, the roster they built in response turned out to be even more successful. The voided contract wasn't just a missed deal, it reset the team's strategy and helped launch one of the best seasons in Heat history. Brunson and Robinson, 3 picks apart. In the second round of the 2018 NBA draft, the Dallas Mavericks selected Jalen Brunson with the 33rd overall pick. Just 3 picks later, at number 36, the New York Knicks drafted Mitchell Robinson. At the time, neither selection made national headlines, but 7 years later, they've become pillars of a Knicks core that reached the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 25 years. Brunson, after several seasons developing in Dallas, made the jump to New York and took over as the team's starting point guard. He became their offensive engine, playoff leader, and all-star presence. Meanwhile, Robinson remained with the Knicks and grew into their defensive anchor, leading the interior, dominating the glass, and protecting the rim with elite instincts. Once he recovered from ankle surgery, their roles couldn't be more complementary. Brunson directs the offense, runs pick and roll, and controls tempo. Robinson anchors the paint, changes shots, and sets brutal screens. And both arrived in the league from the same draft, just 3 names apart, one to Dallas, one to New York. Now they're together, starting at point guard and center for a contending team in one of the NBA's toughest markets. Neither came from the lottery, and both outperformed their draft positions. Their careers rose in parallel until they met in the same uniform, forming the backbone of the Knicks' resurgence. 3 picks apart, 2 second-rounders, 1 franchise-shifting duo. Stories like this are rare, and for the Knicks, it's become one of the most rewarding chapters in recent memory. Oscar Schmidt declines NBA to represent Brazil. In the 1984 NBA draft, the New Jersey Nets selected Oscar Schmidt in the 6th round with the 131st overall pick. They offered him a guaranteed contract and a spot in training camp, but Schmidt declined. Choosing to stay in Europe, he was earning more money in Italy, and more importantly, accepting an NBA deal would have made him ineligible to play for Brazil in international tournaments under the rules at that time. Instead of chasing NBA stardom, Schmidt committed to his national team and became one of the most prolific scorers in basketball history. He competed in 5 Olympic Games, 1980, 84, 88, 92, and 96, making him one of only a few players to do so. He led 3 of those tournaments in scoring, and at the 1988 Seoul Olympics, he averaged a staggering 42.3 points per game. He still holds the Olympic records for most points in a single game, 55, and for total points scored in Olympic history with 1,093. He never wore an NBA jersey, but he scored nearly 49,700 points in his pro career, more than Jordan, Kobe, or Kareem. Only LeBron James has passed that total. Schmidt dominated in Brazil, Italy, and Spain. He was inducted into the FIBA Hall of Fame in 2010 and the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2013. His decision to turn down the NBA wasn't about spotlight. It was about loyalty and legacy, and he built one of the most unbreakable scoring legacies the sport has ever seen. Scott Pollard played a Jayhawk legend. In 2014, former Kansas star and NBA champion Scott Pollard took on a new role, not on the court, but on the screen. He appeared in the independent film Jayhawkers, which tells the story of Wilt Chamberlain's arrival at the University of Kansas and the social changes surrounding college basketball in the 1950s. Pollard portrayed B.H. Bourne, a true Jayhawk legend from an earlier era. Bourne was a dominant center who starred in the 1953 NCAA title game, recording 26 points, 15 rebounds, and 13 block shots. A historic performance that earned him the Final Four Most Outstanding Player award. Just a few years later, he played a key role in recruiting Wilt Chamberlain to Kansas, passing the torch to the next great big. For Pollard, the role was personal. He had also been a standout center at Kansas, wore the crimson and blue, and carved out an 11-year career in the NBA, winning a championship with the Boston Celtics in 2008. His cameo in Jayhawkers brought everything full circle. One Kansas big man honoring another, decades apart, but united by tradition. So while Pollard made his name with hustle and one-of-a-kind hairstyles in the pros, he also did something rare, portraying a fellow legend from his own alma mater on film. A Jayhawk playing a Jayhawk, not just a cameo, but a tribute to legacy. 1 versus 1 tournament, this wild little chapter in NBA history somehow slipped through the cracks. During the NBA Finals in 1972 and 1973, 16 NBA players squared off in a single elimination one-on-one tournament, live during halftime on national television. Yeah, that happened. The games were played to 20, but a player had to win by 4. There were no 3-point shots, just a take-it-out line, a 10-second shot clock, and free throws after the 3rd foul. And no, they weren't messing around. This was real competition, with real money. The total prize pool, $50,500. The champ walked away with $15,000. Runner-up, $7,500. In 1972, Bob Lanier won it all by taking down JoJo White. And just to make it weird, Bill Russell handed him a briefcase stuffed with $15,000 $1 bills on television in front of everyone. Then the next year, Jeff Petrie took the crown by beating Barry Clemens 36-32 at Madison Square Garden, right after Game 3 of the finals, and fans stayed to watch, all 19,000 of them. Petrie even scored some cash for his teammates, $100 per round he won, which meant $500 per guy. It was chaotic, it was random, it was peak early 70s NBA energy, and the tournament got real. Petrie beat names like Gail Goodrich, Bob Dandridge, and Bob McAdoo. Clemens knocked out John Brisker and Spencer Haywood. No gimmicks, no acting, just one-on-one, with a briefcase full of money and a legendary broadcast crew calling every awkward, sweaty minute up. Steven Adams comic. So Steven Adams turned 25 and decided to release a comic book about himself. Not a blog post, not a gritty documentary, a full-blown comic book called Kiwi Legend. It dropped at San Diego Comic-Con in 2018, and it's exactly as chaotic as you'd expect. The story follows Adams from a farm in Rotorua with 17 siblings all the way to the NBA draft, with some sci-fi chaos sprinkled in for flavor. There's even a 4-armed alien in there, because why not? Artist Corey Lewis Ray drew the whole thing, and the Oklahoma City Thunder even posted a video hyping it up. Fans at Comic-Con loved it, and of course it sold out fast. It retailed for about 19 New Zealand dollars, but finding one now? Good luck, it's collector gold. But Adams didn't stop with comics. He's a massive anime fan, like real deal binge watch. At one point, he admitted to missing the NBA season opener because he was too locked in watching anime. Not kidding. His favorite shows? Dragon Ball, Super, Naruto, and Hunter x Hunter. Crunchyroll even gave him a shout out, and he shared a One Piece style wanted poster of himself just to drive the point home. It's rare to see a player mix this much personality into their public image. He didn't just bring the bruises on court, he brought anime off court. The whole comic anime fusion thing gives him a whole new angle. He's not just a center, he's a fanboy with a storyline. And honestly, that's what makes it so fun. There's nothing polished or scripted about it. It's Steven Adams being Steven Adams, with comics, anime, and a very Kiwi twist. Level 1. Forgettable. The rivalry between Kobe Bryant and Brandon Roy was short, intense, and over before it could ever stretch into something iconic. From 2007 through 2010, they faced off just 13 times. That's it, 13. Not exactly a saga. In those games, Kobe averaged close to 30 points, while Roy sat around 15. Now, that doesn't mean Roy wasn't incredible. He was known for being a calm, cerebral scorer who could get a bucket from anywhere. But this rivalry never saw playoff action. That alone drops its long-term value. Kobe did once say Roy was the hardest player to guard in the West, which is high praise from a guy who's gone toe-to-toe with just about everyone. But still, a rivalry needs repetition. It needs weight. Roy's career got cut short due to injuries, and without those high-stakes battles in the postseason, this never had the legs to become something remembered by the casual fan. It had all the ingredients, just no time in the oven. Now, on to Deron Williams and Chris Paul. This one actually had some heat. They came into the league 2 picks apart in 2005, and for a good stretch, there was a real debate on who was better. They played 25 times, and Deron actually won 17 of those matchups. The numbers, nearly the same. Paul had a slight edge in points and assists, but it was razor thin. In the late 2000s, the debates were real. People picked sides, but again, the same issue shows up. No playoff meetings, no high-pressure moments that could have pushed this one to legendary status. As Paul's career climbed into All-NBA and All-Star territory year after year, Deron started fading out, mostly due to injuries and bouncing between teams that didn't really fit. The rivalry, like so many others, just didn't survive the long haul. It's hard to call it unforgettable when it essentially vanished after 2011. Then there's the Spurs and Suns. Look, these two definitely ran into each other a bunch in the playoffs. And anytime Tim Duncan and Steve Nash are sharing a court, it's going to be worth watching. But what they didn't have was a rivalry that captured the league. There wasn't that city versus city tension or any massive cultural impact. They didn't meet in the finals, and while the games mattered, they didn't leave behind the kind of stories fans are still bringing up every June. Duncan had the clear edge in the win column, both in the regular season and playoffs. Nash and the Suns just couldn't crack through that Spurs machine. The matchups were solid, the competition was real, but the legacy just didn't last. It ended up being a sequence of battles without the war. Then you've got Nets versus Raptors. This one flared up when Vince Carter left Toronto and landed with the Nets. And for a second, it looked like it might become something. They met in the playoffs in 2007 and again in 2014. Nets won both series, but beyond that, not much. Carter moved on. The Nets left New Jersey for Brooklyn, and the Raptors began building something else entirely. There was no bad blood, no memorable finals implications, no consistent pattern of clashes. It was a flicker. The kind of rivalry you only remember because someone reminds you it happened. Blake Griffin and Zach Randolph, though, now that's a forgotten gem. From 2012 through 2014, their teams met in back-to-back playoff series, and those games were pure chaos, physical, gritty, and borderline violent. Griffin had the edge in scoring and playmaking, but Randolph was all muscle and rebounding fury. They split the playoff series 1 each, and you never knew if someone was about to throw a sneaky elbow or get tangled up under the rim. It wasn't about finesse, it was about bruises. Despite all that intensity, it never turned into a superstar rival. There wasn't a flashy narrative, no media storm, just two guys grinding it out in games that were way more personal than public. That's why people forget it. And finally, the Jazz and Rockets. Back in the 1990s, they actually had some serious playoff tension. Stockton, Malone, Hakeem, Drexler, those were real names battling in real series. But once those guys retired or moved on, the whole thing collapsed. There was no carryover, no renewal, just a quick series of clashes locked in a specific era. They met in the playoffs several times, but the matchups didn't include final showdowns and didn't spark the kind of cultural storylines that give rivalries weight across generations. It peaked in the 90s and completely vanished after. So even though those games were legit, it just didn't last. Each of these had potential, big names, playoff tension, heated moments, but without longevity, without those consistent matchups, and stories that live in highlight, reels, and halftime debates, they faded. Not because they weren't good, but because they didn't stick. That's what makes them forgettable. Not bad, just unfinished. Level 2, location-based. The Knicks and Nets rivalry exists because both teams call New York home. That's the entire backbone. They've shared the Atlantic Division for decades and played over 200 regular season games, with the Knicks slightly ahead in total wins. But playoff meetings, just 3. Not exactly heated. And while the media loves calling it the Battle of the Boroughs, there's no real history of finals implications or legendary clash. It's a city turf thing, not a rivalry built on basketball milestones. Then you've got the Lakers and Clippers. Yes, they've shared the same building for years. And yes, the Clippers have made things competitive lately. But let's not pretend this is a rivalry based on anything deeper than zip code. The Lakers have more titles than the Clippers have conference finals appearances. Their head-to-head isn't close either. Lakers dominate the all-time series. No playoff battles, no major legacies clashing, just 2 teams sharing a city and fighting for attention. The Mavericks and Rockets are another classic example. Both teams are in Texas, and their matchups get framed as an in-state grudge, but they've only met in the playoffs 3 times, and the all-time record is about even. That's not nothing, but it's not what pushes a rivalry into legendary status. It's mainly about geography. The I-45 rivalry gets brought up a lot, but outside of state bragging rights, it's not stacked with iconic moments or championship weight. The Kings and Warriors? That one took decades just to get a playoff series. They're separated by less than 90 miles in Northern California, and that's always been the reason people label it a rivalry. They've met hundreds of times in the regular season, but until 2023, they'd never crossed paths in the playoff. Even now, there's no long-term feud or decade-spanning battle. It's proximity-driven hype more than anything else. Heat and Magic is basically Florida's contribution to location-based rivalries. 2 teams in the same state, occasionally decent at the same time, but very little actual heat. They've only met once in the playoffs, way back in 1997. Their head-to-head record in the regular season is tilted toward the Heat. Beyond that, not a whole lot. It's labeled the Sunshine State rivalry, but in reality, it's just Orlando and Miami happening to exist in the same state with very different basketball histories. Spurs versus Mavericks has a bit more substance, but geography still plays the biggest role. These teams have met multiple times in the playoffs, and there were some real battles in the early 2000s. But even with that, the driving force has always been Texas proximity. There wasn't a long-standing superstar feud or finals-level drama. It's one of the better location rivalries, sure, but it still fits this tier because the foundation is state lines, not NBA history. The Knicks and Sixers is another one that sounds big, but doesn't deliver in the rivalry department. Yes, they've played each other hundreds of times. Yes, they're in the same division, but the matchups haven't been iconic or filled with long playoff wars. It's a Northeast corridor clash built more on media market overlap than actual storyline. There's volume, but not much substance beyond where the arenas are located. Lastly, the Spurs and Rockets, another Texas matchup that gets the rivalry tag by default. They've had some playoff runs against each other and plenty of regular season meetings, but the real driver has always been geography. Spurs fans and Rockets fans don't like each other because they live in the same state, not because their teams keep eliminating each other in huge moments. It's more about who owns Texas than who owns the league. So yeah, all these matchups come from a map, not a movie script. There's history, but it's mostly geographic, not dramatic. They exist because teams are near each other, not because their stories are intertwined. Level 3, player-driven. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird didn't just face off in the NBA, they started their rivalry before that, back in the 1979 NCAA championship. That game was only the beginning. When they entered the league, Magic with the Lakers and Bird with the Celtics, they immediately became the faces of 2 franchises that defined the 80s. Their head-to-head matchups totaled 37 games, and Magic's teams won 22 of those. They met in the finals 3 times, with Magic coming out on top twice. This rivalry was less about cities and more about how 2 completely different styles clashed. Magic ran the floor like a conductor with a basketball, and Bird brought this methodical, tough, high IQ game that gave defenders nightmares. They pushed each other, and while the Lakers and Celtics already had their history, it was Magic and Bird that brought it roaring back to life with personal edge. Shaq and Kobe Bryant had a rivalry inside the same jersey. From 1996 to 2004, they built a dynasty, but their relationship was packed with tension. 3 straight titles, 3 finals MVPs for Shaq, and constant reports of clashes behind the scenes. After Shaq was traded, the rivalry evolved, Kobe chasing his own legacy, trying to prove he didn't need the big man, Eventually he did. Kobe won 2 more rings without him. This wasn't about team rivalries. This was 2 superstars in the same spotlight, battling to be the one standing in it. Paul Pierce and LeBron James saw a lot of each other in the late 2000s and early 2010s. They weren't friendly rivals. There was trash talk, a real edge to every meeting. In total, they faced off 69 times, with LeBron barely leading in wins. In the playoffs, LeBron had the edge again, 17-13. Pierce was already established with the Celtics, and LeBron was the rising star trying to get through Boston to reach the top. Every series felt personal, and while the teams mattered, the spotlight always circled back to LeBron versus Pierce. Giannis and James Harden might not have the decades-long story of the old-school matchups, but their rivalries got something else: conflict, from MVP debates to shade thrown through the media. It always felt like these two just didn't mesh. They faced each other 28 times, and it's been perfectly split, 14 wins apiece. Giannis plays with relentless physicality and versatility, while Harden's all craft and scoring finesse. There was a time not long ago when fans and analysts were constantly comparing them. Who was more valuable? Who was more impactful? Who could carry a team deeper? And that constant comparison fueled their head-to-heads. Karl Malone and Dennis Rodman locked horns in some of the most physical games of the 90s. Malone brought the power and the mid-range scoring, and Rodman was the pest who lived to disrupt him. They played 45 times, and it was a full-on clash of roles. In the finals, Malone scored, Rodman rebounded, and neither backed down. Their games were filled with battles on the glass, hard fouls, and a whole lot of chest bumps. This wasn't about team banter. It was about 2 guys trying to dominate the same space on the floor. LeBron James and Kevin Durant are different from the other rivalries because their timeline's still active. They've gone at it over 40 times, including some massive finals matchups. LeBron has more wins, but Durant's got finals victories that came while matched up against him. This one isn't just about stats. It's about careers that have been defined in comparison to one another. They've both been league MVPs, scoring champions, and faces of their own dynasties. When they're on the floor together, everything stops. It's LeBron versus KD. That's the show. And then there's Patrick Ewing and Hakeem, the battle of the bigs. These two anchored the middle for over a decade and clashed 35 times. Their most famous meeting came in the 1994 finals. Hakeem's Rockets took that series in 7 games, but both centers left everything out there. Hakeem averaged nearly 27 points in that series, while Ewing grabbed over 12 rebounds a night. The matchup was all about interior dominance, footwork versus strength, defense versus finesse. And for fans of 90s basketball, that rivalry was a masterclass in what it meant to be a franchise center. These rivalries weren't about cities or jerseys, they were about names. Magic, Bird, Shaq, Kobe, LeBron, Durant. Their battles shaped careers, legacies, and in some cases, the direction of the entire league. Level 4, one-sided. The LeBron-era Cavaliers absolutely owned the Raptors. From 2016 through 2018, Toronto ran into Cleveland in the playoffs 3 straight years and lost every single time. It wasn't just defeats, it was dominance. In 10 playoff games across those last 2 matchups, Cleveland won all 10. LeBron averaged nearly 27 points, along with nearly 8 assists and 7 rebounds per game in 62 career games against Toronto. Even when the Raptors had their best regular season in franchise history, they couldn't get through Cleveland. It got so lopsided that fans started calling Toronto LeBronto. The Raptors had great players and strong records, but whenever they saw LeBron in May, the story was already written. No matter the year or roster tweaks, it ended with Cleveland walking away and Toronto left, wondering how to stop one guy. Then there's Rocket versus Warriors. Houston built entire rosters designed to take Golden State down, switch heavy defenses, floor spacing, isolations galore, and it never worked. Sure, in the regular season, they could hang with the Warriors. They even held the edge in some years, but in the playoffs, 0 series wins. Golden State went 5-0 against them. The 2018 Western Conference Finals was the closest they came, taking it to 7 games, even leading by double digits in Game 7. But then they missed 27 straight three-pointers, and Golden State punched their finals ticket again. Harden was brilliant. Chris Paul was injured. None of it mattered. The Warriors always found a way to win. Houston's obsession with beating that team turned into a long, painful string of almost. Michael Jordan versus Wilkins had style, highlights, and elite scoring, but not a fair fight. Jordan averaged over 31 points in their 48 head-to-head games, and his Bulls won 30 of those. Wilkins was a phenomenal scorer, but Jordan wasn't just putting up numbers. he was racking up wins. They never met in the playoffs during Wilkins' best years, but even in the regular season, Jordan's dominance was clear. While Wilkins wowed crowds with dunks and athleticism, Jordan was doing all that and taking the dub. Their battles made for great shows, but there was never a doubt about who was leaving with the upper hand. Tim Duncan's Spurs versus the Grit and Grind Grizzlies is a textbook one-sided rivalry. They faced off 4 times in the playoffs during Duncan's career. San Antonio won 3 of those series. In 2013, the Grizzlies made it to the Western Conference Finals for the first time in franchise history, and the Spurs swept them. It wasn't just that San Antonio had more talent. They had the experience, the composure, and the firepower Memphis couldn't match. Even when Memphis pulled off the 8-1 upset in 2011, beating the Spurs in the first round, it never flipped the rivalry. That series was the exception, not the rule. Over the full stretch of Duncan's career, San Antonio handled Memphis again and again. They always had the answer. The Jordan Bulls versus the Ewing Knicks felt like war, physical, dramatic, intense. But the Bulls kept winning. New York was constantly stuck playing runner-up in the Eastern Conference. In the 90s, the Knicks had their shot nearly every year, and nearly every year the Bulls were the wall they couldn't climb. They met 6 times in the playoffs during the Jordan era. Chicago won 5 of those series. In 1993, it was supposed to be New York's year. They had home court. They were up 2 games to none. Then Jordan took the next 4, and it was over. Even in the years Jordan was gone, the Knicks still couldn't get past the Bulls in the standing. The battles were fierce, but the results were lopsided. Jordan always closed the door. And finally, Kings versus Lakers. In the early 2000s, the Kings had one of the most exciting teams in basketball. They had ball movement, depth, star power, and an actual chance, but it didn't matter. The Lakers won every playoff series. In 2000, they beat Sacramento in 5. In 2001, they swept them. In 2002, they went to 7 games, and that's where the pain settled in for Kings fans. That Game 6 became one of the most controversial in league history. 18 more free throws for the Lakers in the 4th quarter alone. Sacramento had the talent to win a title, but Los Angeles always stood in the way. Kobe and Shaq were just too much. The Kings got close, but close didn't count. Each of these rivalries had potential. There were stars, intensity, high stakes, but they all share the same script. One side writing the ending every single time. Level 5, era defined. Cavaliers versus Warriors wasn't just a rivalry, it was the rivalry of the 2010s. They met in 4 straight NBA finals, something no other pair of teams has ever done. In 2015, Golden State came out on top, winning in 6 games against a shorthanded Cleveland team. The very next year, Cleveland made history, becoming the first team ever to come back from down 3-1 in the finals. LeBron's chase down block, Kyrie's dagger 3, it all happened in that series night. But after that, Golden State shifted the balance of power again. In 2017 and 2018, with Kevin Durant now on the roster, the Warriors beat the Cavaliers in 5 and then swept them in 4. The matchups became the NBA's most watched drama, showcasing 2 completely different play styles: the 3-point heavy, movement-based Warriors, and the LeBron-led, physical and cerebral Cavaliers. This wasn't just 2 teams playing basketball, it was the league's identity in that decade. Every postseason seemed like a path leading back to this clash. These finals defined how people remember the era. Knicks versus Pacers in the 90s was pure Eastern Conference chaos. They met in the playoffs 6 times across that decade. 3 of those series went the distance. In 1994, the Knicks outlasted the Pacers in a brutal 7-game Eastern Conference Finals. But Indiana struck back in 1995, with Reggie Miller hitting 8 points in under 9 seconds in Game 1 and delivering the ultimate Spike Lee retaliation. This rivalry was all elbows, stare downs, and late game drama. Even the 2000 Eastern Conference Finals gave us more fuel, with Indiana finally breaking through and reaching the final. The players didn't hide their dislike. Ewing and Oakley brought toughness. Miller and Rick Smits brought sharpshooting and post play, and it all played out in the trenches. If you wanted to explain what the 90s looked like in the East, you point to this rivalry. It was intense, memorable, and stretched out long enough to evolve from personal to iconic. Dirk versus Wade became one of the NBA's most compelling 2-part stories. The first act was in 2006. Wade erupted in the finals, averaging nearly 35 points a game, and Miami came back from a 2-game deficit to win the title. That loss haunted Dirk. Fast forward to 2011, and the rematch was set. Wade now had LeBron by his side, while Dirk was leading a veteran Dallas squad. This time, Dirk flipped the script. He took over 4th quarters, hit clutch shots, and led the Mavericks to their first championship. The finals MVP went to Dirk, and his revenge tour was complete. Along the way, Wade and LeBron had mocked Dirk's illness in a press conference, only to get beaten in 6 games. The rivalry only had 2 final series, but the weight of those moments and the direct player-versus-player impact made it one of the defining clashes of the late 2000s and early 2010s. It was about redemption, legacy, and the evolution of 2 stars across time. Duncan versus Garnett was all business. No trash talk, no theatrics, just 2 of the best big men of the 2000s going head-to-head over 50 times. Garnett brought fire and versatility. Duncan brought poise and consistency. They both dominated on both ends, but in different ways. Duncan won 5 titles. Garnett grabbed 1. Duncan had the edge in team success and playoff dominance, but the games were always battle. When Garnett was in Minnesota, the rivalry was quiet. Great play on bad teams facing off against greatness. But once he joined Boston, the tone changed. They met an intense playoff series, including a 7-game war in 2008. That year, Garnett's Celtics went on to win it all, but Duncan and the Spurs remained a benchmark of consistency. Their clash wasn't about drama. It was about how the power forward role evolved in a decade shaped by them. This rivalry was less about headline and more about the way they pushed the position forward. Walt Frazier versus Jerry West is one of the best examples of how rivalry shaped the early NBA. These 2 guards defined the league's look in the late 60s and early 70s. West was already established, Mr. Clutch, a scoring machine with surgical precision. Frazier, on the other hand, brought flash, defense, and New York cool. They didn't just meet in regular season games, they represented opposite coasts, opposite styles, and opposite stages of stardom. West averaged close to 29 points per game in their meetings. Frazier, never quite as statistically dominant, still held his own and led the Knicks to 2 championships. In 1970, Frazier had a legendary Game 7, 36 points, 19 assists, helping seal a title and outplaying West in the most important game of their head-to-head story. This wasn't just a rivalry of numbers. It was about rising national exposure, growing popularity, and the NBA expanding its audience. When people talk about what pro basketball looked like before the Magic and Bird era, Frazier and West is the rivalry that comes up. Every one of these rivalries didn't just happen. They shaped how people remember basketball in their respective decades. From the pure physical grind of Knicks Pacers to the stylistic arms race of Cavaliers Warriors, these weren't just matchups. They were cultural snapshots. These were the clashes that told the story of where the league had been and where it was going. Level 6, Bad Blood. Pistons versus Pacers is the rivalry nobody forgets. Not because of a playoff classic or a final showdown, but because of the night everything exploded. November 19th, 2004. With 45 seconds left in a regular season game, a hard foul by Ron Artest turned into a shove by Ben Wallace, which then became an all-out brawl that spilled into the stand. Artest jumped into the crowd after being hit by a drink. Steven Jackson followed. Fans were throwing punches. Players were swinging back. It ended with 9 players suspended for a total of 146 games and several fans facing criminal charges. The league overhauled its security and alcohol policies. It went from game to chaos in second, and the incident, later called Malice at the Palace, marked the lowest point of NBA player-fan relations. But even before that night, these teams already had tension. Both were physical, both were Central Division rivals, and both wanted to be the dominant force in the East. After that game, it was clear. This wasn't just a rivalry, it was personal. Russell Westbrook versus Kevin Durant was once a partnership. They shared the floor in Oklahoma City, made a finals run, and looked like the West's future. But everything changed on July 4th, 2016, when Durant signed with the team that beat them, the Warriors. Westbrook didn't take it lightly. Their first game against each other after the split was filled with stare-downs and silence. They didn't talk, didn't acknowledge each other, and played like they had something to prove. Durant joined a juggernaut, while Westbrook played angry and alone. Westbrook posted cryptic social media shots, like the cupcake post aimed at Durant. Durant clapped back in interviews, and their head-to-head matchups turned into must-watch TV. Even their teammates added fuel, with subtle jabs and clear sides. The bad blood came from more than basketball. It was about loyalty, abandonment, and respect. The chemistry they once had turned into visible friction every time they stepped on the court. Dwight Howard and Shaq never shared a team, but their feud might have been more intense than most player rivalries. The issue started with a nickname. Howard embraced the Superman identity, same as Shaq once did, and that didn't sit well with O'Neal. From there, Shaq publicly criticized Dwight repeatedly. He questioned his skill, downplayed his dominance, and made it clear he didn't see Howard as his successor. Howard, on his part, kept trying to stay respectful, but eventually responded, saying Shaq seemed insecure. The tension wasn't about one moment, it was about legacy. Shaq saw someone being compared to him and didn't like it. Howard saw a legend tearing him down when he should have been lifting him up. They went back and forth in interviews, never letting the issue rest. It wasn't just two centers in different eras. It was two careers clashing in public view. Westbrook versus Patrick Beverley has always been fueled by contact, physical, literal, and unrelenting. It all started in 2013. Westbrook was calling a timeout in a playoff game when Beverley lunged in for a steal and hit Westbrook's knee, causing a torn meniscus. That single play changed the Thunder's playoff run and Westbrook's relationship with Beverley. After that, every meeting came with tension. In 2014, Beverley tried the same move again, earning a technical foul. The confrontations kept happening. They jawed during games, shoved, barked at refs, and carried visible resentment. At one point, Westbrook said Beverley tricks y'all, claiming he wasn't a great defender, just aggressive. Beverley fired back, calling him a stat chaser. The feud became more than hard fouls. It became a war of perception, pride, and who controlled the narrative around their reputation. Larry Bird and Isaiah Thomas had a rivalry wrapped inside two larger team feuds, Celtics versus Pistons and East Coast versus Midwest, but their issues were personal too. In the late 1980s, they faced each other dozens of times, including intense playoff battles. In one unforgettable moment, in the 1987 Eastern Conference Finals, Bird stole an inbounds pass from Thomas in the closing seconds and scored the game-winning layup. Later, Thomas gave an interview where he said if Bird were black, he'd be just another good guy, sparking major backlash. Though he apologized, the damage was done. Their matchups were already heated, but after that, things got even sharper. Bird's Celtics kept trying to fend off the rising bad boys, and Thomas was at the heart of that push. Their head-to-head ended in Bird's favor, but the friction never fully cooled. Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas went from best friends to cold stares in the final. They met in back-to-back NBA championships in 1988 and 1989. Magic won one, Isaiah won the other, but their personal fallout came off the court. Magic later said that Thomas had spread rumors questioning his sexuality after Magic's HIV diagnosis. Isaiah denied it, but the rift was deep. Their friendship dissolved, and when the Dream Team roster came out for the 1992 Olympics, Thomas was left off. Many believed Magic and other stars played a role in that exclusion. The feud lingered for years. They went from sharing kisses before games to avoiding each other altogether. It wasn't until 2017 that they publicly reconciled in an emotional TV interview. But for over 2 decades, what had been a model friendship turned into one of the most personal, layered rivalries in NBA history. Each of these rivalries didn't just have competitive stakes, they had wounds, physical, emotional, or reputational. They weren't just games, they were grudges played out in front of millions. Level 7, historic. The Lakers and Celtics rivalry isn't just long-standing, it's basically the NBA's unofficial calendar. When they meet, history gets a little louder. They've gone head-to-head in the finals a record 12 times, and those meetings have spanned across 6 different decades. There's a reason people talk about this rivalry, like it's an epic saga, because that's exactly what it is. From the early days of Bill Russell denying Los Angeles title after title, to the 80s, when Larry Bird and Magic Johnson dragged the rivalry right into primetime TV, this clash kept evolving. In the 60s alone, Boston walked away with all 6 finals wins over Los Angeles, stacking banners, while LA collected runner-up frustration. The 80s flipped the energy. Magic brought the Showtime era, and those Celtics-Lakers finals in 1984, 85, and 87 were instant classics. That back and forth wasn't just competitive, it felt personal. It helped define the decade, and they weren't done. The two franchises met again in 2008, and then again in 2010. That stretch gave us Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Kobe Bryant, adding their names to the long scroll of legends tied to this war. The Celtics took 2008, the Lakers bounced back and claimed 2010. You couldn't write a more balanced script if you tried. The Celtics lead the all-time series, both regular season and playoffs, but it's close. And that's part of what keeps the fire going. They're practically mirrors of each other when it comes to legacy. Now, the Isaiah Thomas and Michael Jordan saga, that's pure spite-fueled fuel. They didn't like each other, and it showed. In 65 matchups, Thomas walked away with the slight edge, 36 wins to 29. He had the edge in playoff games too, 12 to 10. But this wasn't just some numbers game. These two fought for control of the East, and it got messy. In the late 80s, the Pistons were the last wall Jordan had to climb, and Detroit made it painful. They pushed, shoved, and sent Chicago home 3 straight years. But in 1991, everything flipped. The Bulls finally broke through, and Detroit walked off the court without a handshake with almost 8 seconds left on the clock. That moment, silent, petty, unforgettable, kind of froze there. Relationship and time. Then there's the Dream Team drama. Thomas didn't make the roster in 1992, and people still argue about why. But with Jordan having major influence, it's hard not to connect those dots. This rivalry was more than basketball. It was a shift. When Chicago finally took over, it marked the beginning of Jordan's empire and the end of Detroit's reign. That transition, it changed the league's entire vibe. Less bruising, more branding. But if you want to talk dominance, meeting resistance, Wilt Chamberlain versus Bill Russell is the origin story of big man drama. These two saw each other across the court around 142 times. Chamberlain did what he always did. He put up numbers that looked fake. Over 30 points, nearly 29 rebounds, close to 4 assists per game. But the scoreboard kept siding with Russell. In 8-0 playoff series, Russell's teams won 7. That's not a coin toss, that's a trend. Chamberlain had a 4-8 record in finals games when Russell was the opponent. Meanwhile, Russell won 11 titles in 13 seasons. 2 for Wilt. One guy had the stats, the other guy had the rings. It was brains versus brawn, structure versus solo strength, and Russell's team-first style came out on top way more often than not. What makes it wild is that Chamberlain wasn't some selfish scorer. He adjusted, he passed, he rebounded like he was allergic to letting other people touch the ball. But Russell always had the deeper team, and he made those teams better with pure defense, leadership, and consistency. This wasn't just about 2 players. It was about 2 visions of basketball clashing, and Russell's vision kept winning. The early 80s brought another heavyweight battle, this time at the forward position. Larry Bird and Julius Erving weren't just stars, they were opposites in style, who kept ending up in each other's path. Between Bird and Erving, there were 68 showdowns. Bird won 35, Erving won 33. It was tight all the way. They didn't duck each other either. They met in 4 Eastern Conference finals, 1980, 81, 82, and 85. That stretch saw the Celtics and Sixers battling for control of the East year after year. And the thing was, both teams brought different flavors. Philly was flash and finesse. Boston was grit and cold precision. One game in 1984 kind of summed up their energy. Bird dropped 42 points in 30 minutes and held Irving to 6. 6. That's not just a statement, that's a warning. Still, Irving had his moments too. He wasn't some passenger. He was leading Philly to consistent playoff battles, throwing down dunks and making defenders rethink their life choices. This wasn't a one-sided clash. It was 2 icons fighting to control the stage before Jordan took over the league spotlight. What's wild about all 4 of these rivalries is how much they did for the NBA beyond just the scoreboard. They weren't temporary beefs or one-year flukes. They were battles that helped shape the league's identity. Whether it was dynasties clashing, legends battling for the crown, or styles colliding, these showdowns made basketball feel massive. You didn't just watch them, you remembered them. Every meeting, Mo added another piece to the story. They stretched across eras, from grainy, black and white footage to primetime cable, from Russell's methodical control to Jordan's explosive rise, from Magic's dazzling passes to Kobe's footwork. And every rivalry brought out something different in each player. Toughness, swagger, pettiness, heart. That's why they all live in the historic category. They're not just memories, they're milestones. Kings 43 game. This one was rough. The Sacramento Kings hold the record for the longest road losing streak in NBA history, 43 straight losses away from home. It started all the way back on November 21st, 1990, and dragged on for over a year. That first road loss, a close one against Philadelphia, but it didn't stay close for long. During the 1990-91 season, the Kings were in full disaster mode. They kicked things off with a 1-13 start and just kept finding new ways to lose. They ended the year at the bottom of the Pacific Division with a 25-57 record. But the real kicker, they went 1-40 on the road. 1 win out of 40 road games. That's the worst road record in NBA history, ever. The pain bled into the next season too. The streak didn't snap until November 23rd, 1991, when they barely edged out Orlando. That's right, it took them over a calendar year to win a game on the road. And those losses weren't close either. They were getting blown out by an average of over 16 points per game. Eventually, the front office had seen enough and fired head coach Dick Motta after they started the new season 7-18. Even now, that 43-game skid stands as a brutal reminder of how far off the rails things can go. Brandon Knight's Big 3L moments. Let's start with the one that broke the internet. Back in March of 2013, DeAndre Jordan launched into orbit and dunked over Brandon Knight like he wasn't even there. Chris Paul floated up a perfect lob, and Jordan turned it into a poster so savage it sparked fake obituary memes. Fans exploded online, and Knight, bless his soul, got turned into a punchline overnight. Then came All-Star Weekend that same year. The Rising Stars Challenge was Kyrie's personal highlight reel, and Knight was his favorite prop. Kyrie dropped not one, but 2 crossovers that sent Knight sliding like a folding chair on ice. The crowd went wild. Kyrie smirked, and the cameras made sure the whole world saw it on loop. That clip lives forever in crossover history, and Knight unfortunately got the starring role without asking. Now, fast forward to November 19, 2014. The Bucks and Nets were deep into a triple overtime battle. Brandon Knight had the ball, wide open, streaking down the court. He went up for a layup that would have ended the game, and he missed it. Nobody was near him, but somehow, he bricked it. To his credit, he bounced back, hit a huge 3 to tie it later, knocked down clutch free throws, and helped seal the win. Still, people remember the miss. That one play became the headline, while the redemption quietly faded behind it. 3 moments, 1 player, a whole lot of internet trauma. Celtics traded Desmond Bane. They had the 30th overall pick in the 2020 draft and used it to select Desmond Bane, only to hand him off to the Grizzlies in a 3-team deal that also involved Portland. What did they get back? 2 second-round picks and Mario Hezonja. That's it. Desmond Bane's rights, plus Enes Kanter and some cash, all gone for a return that made almost zero noise at the time. Those 2 picks, the 2023 pick, helped Boston trade for Mike Muscala, who played 20 games and was later tossed into the Kristaps trade. The other pick, set for 2025, helped them bring back Al Horford, who's definitely valuable, but also nearing the end of his run. So yeah, not nothing, but not exactly jaw-dropping. Meanwhile, Desmond Bane turned into a lights-out shooter and one of the best two-way guards in the league. He made the all-rookie second team and just kept climbing. Analysts have not been kind to Boston about this one. The move's often called haunting, and fans still groan whenever Bane goes off for 30. It's not that the Celtics got absolutely nothing. It's just that they gave away a player with serious upside for what now feels like spare change. This trade hasn't aged well, and it's hard not to think they'd love a do-over. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Sixers went 9-73. That's not a typo. That was their final record. They won only 9 games out of 82. It's still the worst full season record in league history, and honestly, it's hard to imagine anyone topping it. They lost 15 straight to start, then threw in a 20-game skid later. At one point, they were sitting at 458. Their only real spark came in mid-February when they somehow won 5 out of 7, beating good teams like Milwaukee and New York. But those flashes didn't matter. By the end, they were 12 points worse than opponents every night on average. The whole thing was a mess, and not just on the court. They couldn't land a coach, tried for college legends, and struck out. Ended up hiring Roy Rubin, who'd never coached in the league. That went exactly as you'd expect. Players called him a con man. When they finally replaced him with Kevin Loffery, they still finished 5-26. So yeah, that helped. Hal Greer was the only one left from their title team 6 years earlier. Everyone else was gone. Trades and bad drafting gutted the roster. The city called them the 9-73ers, and fans still use that season as the bottom of the barrel. Author Charlie Rosen literally wrote a book about how bad it was. Even now, when a team's falling apart, people point back to this squad. This wasn't just a losing team, it was a slow-motion disaster that never stopped crashing. Knicks drafted Kevin Knox over Shea. Both played together at Kentucky during the 2017 to 2018 season, so the Knicks front office had a front row seat to evaluate them. They even had Shea in for a pre-draft workout, and still, they picked Knox 9th overall. Shea went 11th and was traded to the Clippers that same night. Now let's be real, this one has aged like spoiled milk. Knox was chosen partly because the Knicks needed a forward. They already had a young guard in Frank Ntilikina, so they locked in on positional need. But Shea showed more versatility, more field, and way more upside. Even in college, the red flags on Knox's game were flashing, but the Knicks still rolled the dice. In hindsight, it's brutal. Shea turned into an MVP and a Finals MVP. Knox, he never found his role. He bounced around teams, struggled with minutes, and his development stalled almost immediately. Analysts didn't hold back. Stefan Bondi called it egregious. Fans still bring up how wild it is that Knox was rated higher than Shea. One Reddit thread said, "It's kinda crazy the Knicks watched both side by side and got it that wrong. This wasn't just a bad draft pick. It's a full-on organizational whiff. The Knicks, scouted both guys, saw them in the same system, and still took the one who flamed out. That makes it sting more than most misses. It's a cold reminder of how talent evaluation can totally backfire. Cavs collapsed. After LeBron left, in 2010, LeBron took his talents elsewhere, and Cleveland fell straight through the floor. They went from 61 wins to just 19 the very next season. That's a 42-win drop, the worst single-season decline in the league history. Then came the losing streak, 26 straight games, from late December to mid-February. It set the single-season record and tied the all-time mark for any American pro team. They finally snapped it in overtime against the Clippers, but by then the damage was done. Everything around the franchise was unraveling. Danny Ferry stepped down, Mike Brown got fired, and Byron Scott stepped in. The roster was gutted. Zydrunas Ilgauskas followed LeBron to Miami, and the Cavs brought in guys like Ryan Hollins and Christian Eyenga. That's not exactly a title squad. On the court, it was a mess. They went 0-16 in January, the first winless month in franchise history. They gave up 80 points in one half against Denver. They scored just 57 points total in a game and lost to the Lakers by 55. By season's end, they were dead last in the East and looked nothing like a team that had been a contender just a year earlier. The bright side, they landed the #1 pick in the 2011 draft and selected Kyrie. That became the start of their long, uneven climb back to relevance. But the fall? That one's still legendary. CJ McCollum's brutal playoff record. He's played in 67 playoff games and only won 20. That's it. 20 wins, 47 losses. That puts him at a 29.9% winning rate, the lowest in NBA history for any player with at least 50 playoff games. Not low among active players, not just among guards. Lowest ever. Steve Blake, slightly better at 32.1%. Thaddeus Young, 32.8%. Mookie Blaylock, 33.3%. CJ is holding down the bottom, and it's not even close. Now, before anyone blames him entirely, let's be clear. He's been productive. In the playoffs, he's averaged over 20 points, with 4 boards and 3 assists. He's shown up, but the teams around him, not so much. Portland had plenty of tough matchups and early exits. Same story in New Orleans. The stat hits harder because it's not from a small sample. 67 games means he's been to the playoffs again and again, just to watch his team come up short almost every time. It's a rare case of a consistently solid, individual postseason performer racking up loss after loss. It's the kind of stat you have to double check because it doesn't seem real, but it is. CJ McCollum has the worst playoff win percentage of anyone with that much experience. He's got the minutes, the points, the highlights, but not the wins. This one's not just tough, it's historically rough. Kuzma's Game 1, statless disaster. In just over 21 minutes, Kyle Kuzma managed to record exactly 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 blocks, 0 steals, 5 missed shots from the field, 2 missed free throws, and a brutal -24 plus minus. It wasn't just quiet, it was historically invisible. Only 5 other players in NBA playoff history have played at least 20 minutes and put up all zeros in the major stat categories. That's since steals and blocks started being tracked in the 70s. Guys like Mike Dunleavy, Bruce Bowen, Brent Barry, and Maurice Lucas. Kuzma just added his name to a list nobody wants to join. Doc Rivers tried to spin it, saying it's hard to score when you don't touch the ball. But the numbers don't fully back him up. Kuzma had 3 first-half shots, not 2, and only 1 of his 5 total attempts came late in the shot clock. Meanwhile, Giannis put up 36 and 12. The problem? Almost nobody else helped. Kuzma and Taurean Prince both went scoreless, and the Pacers took full advantage. The Bucks needed their role players to show up. Kuzma showed up in uniform, but that's about it. This wasn't just a rough night. It was one of the coldest stat lines you'll ever see in playoff history. When your name ends up in the record books for doing nothing, that's not just an off game. Warriors went 73-9 and didn't finish the job. After putting together the best regular season in NBA history, Golden State finished the job half-baked. They won 73 games, more than Jordan's Bulls ever did, and still came up empty. They tore through the regular season. No back-to-back losses. Nobody beat them twice. They dropped over 1,000 threes, set the road win record, and Steph Curry won his second MVP, unanimously. First time that ever happened. Then the playoffs. Houston, handled in 5. Portland, 5 again. Oklahoma City, pushed them to 7, but the Warriors came back from down 3-1. That should have been the warning sign, because in the finals, it flipped. They went up 3-1 on Cleveland. Looked like a wrap, but then Draymond Green got suspended for Game 5. LeBron and Kyrie both dropped 41. Series went to 3-2. Game 6, LeBron did it again. Curry fouled out and got tossed after throwing his mouth guard. Then came Game 7. Cleveland won 93-89. The Warriors couldn't close. They became the first team to blow a 3-1 lead in the finals, the first 70-plus win team to lose the title, and the Cavaliers won it all on the road. For all the records, all the flash, all the three-pointers, Golden State's year ended with a footnote that still stings: 73 wins and nothing to show for it. It's one of the biggest L's in league history, and it's not up for debate. Nick Anderson missed 4 straight free throws. In Game 1 of the 1995 NBA Finals, the Magic were up 110-107 with under 10 seconds left. Anderson, a 70% free throw shooter, got fouled. This was the moment to ice the game. He missed the first, then the second, got his own rebound, fouled again. 2 more chances, missed the third, then the fourth, 4 in a row, all zeros. The Rockets grabbed the rebound, called timeout, and Kenny Smith hit a three-pointer with 1.6 seconds left to send it to overtime. Houston won 120-118 and never looked back. The Magic got swept. This wasn't just one rough trip to the line. It cracked everything. Anderson never shot over 64% from the line again in any season after that. He later admitted it got in his head. His teammates felt it too. Shaq said when Anderson missed the first 2, he still believed in him. Penny said the team lost its spirit after Game 1 and never recovered. Only seconds separated the Magic from a 1-game lead in their first finals appearance. Instead, it became one of the most painful collapses in finals history. That moment, those 4 misses, haunted Anderson's career and marked the beginning of the end in Orlando. One sequence, 4 misses, a shot at a title, gone. Wolves picked Rubio and Flynn over Steph Curry. In the 2009 draft, Minnesota had back-to-back lottery picks, 5th and 6th overall. With both, they went all in on point guards. First, they grabbed Ricky Rubio out of Spain. Then they took Johnny Flynn from Syracuse. Sitting there, still available at pick number 7, was Steph Curry. And Minnesota let him slide. Golden State scooped him up right after. The rest is NBA history. Curry became a 2-time MVP, a multi-time champion, and the league's all-time leader in three-pointers made. Meanwhile, Rubio had a decent career, but never sniffed superstar status. Flynn, he lasted 3 seasons. David King, the Timberwolves general manager at the time, later explained the decision. He said Curry's camp made it clear he didn't want to play in Minnesota, so rather than deal with the drama, they skipped him twice. In his own words, drafting Curry anyway would have taken real cojones. It didn't help that the team had already drafted another point guard, so doubling down was risky, but it also meant Curry went to the Warriors, one of the most transformative turns in league history. Analysts still call it one of the worst draft decisions ever. Flynn's career derailed almost immediately, and Rubio never became the franchise player Minnesota needed. Passing on Steph Curry, not once, but twice? That's not just bad judgment. That's a full-on franchise-level L that fans and front offices still talk about 15 years later. Anthony Bennett started his career with 0 buckets. The first overall pick in the 2013 draft couldn't buy a field goal in his first 4 NBA games. That's not exaggeration. He literally went 0 for 16 from the field. His only points came from 2 free throws. That's it, 2 points in 4 games. This wasn't just a cold streak, it was history. Since the common draft era began in 1966, no number 1 pick had ever scored fewer points in their first 4 games. And then came Game 5. That's when he finally made a field goal, breaking the drought that had already become a punchline. For context, guys like LeBron James, Blake Griffin, Kyrie, and Anthony Davis all came into the league, making noise right away. Bennett, 4 of his first 5 games ended without a single made basket. That's a start no top pick had ever stumbled into. The rookie struggles weren't just obvious, they were historic. And from that moment on, the conversation shifted from expectations to damage control. The start of Anthony Bennett's career didn't just disappoint. It set the tone for one of the most infamous draft selections in league history. When your first points come in Game 5 and your first 4 games look like this, the L sticks for a long, long time. Kings lost both Fox and Halliburton. It started in 2017 when Sacramento drafted Fox with the 5th overall pick. 3 years later, they landed Tyrese Halliburton at 12. 2 promising point guards, both under 25, both seen as long-term franchise pieces. But within 3 years, both were gone. In February 2022, the Kings traded Halliburton to Indiana. The return, Domantas Sabonis, Justin Holiday, Jeremy Lamb, and a second-round pick. At the time, it was clear Sacramento had chosen Fox. Halliburton didn't fit, and the front office went all in on one guard while shipping out the other. Then came February 2025. The Kings flipped Fox to the Spurs in a 3-team deal that brought back Zach LaVine, Sidi Sissoko, and draft capital. That's it. Both Fox and Halliburton drafted just 3 years apart, both gone by 2025. Sports Illustrated reported the Kings had nearly traded Fox instead of Halliburton back in 2022, but changed course. Fans never forgot that. What made it worse? After trading Halliburton, the Kings built around Fox, then traded him too. They reset around one guard, then bailed again. For a team known for misfires, this two-step guard purge became the latest disaster. Sacramento invested top picks in 2 talented guards, then watched both walk out the door by choice. For a franchise chasing relevance, that's not just an L. That's a blueprint for going in circles. Cavs, let Isaiah Hartenstein walk. In 2021, Cleveland had a legit steal. Hartenstein came over midseason and played just 16 games, but made the most of them. In under 18 minutes a night, he averaged over 8 points, 6 rebounds, and more than 1 block. Efficient, active, and reliable off the bench. Then came the offseason. Hartenstein declined his $1.8 million player option, becoming a restricted free agent. That gave Cleveland the chance to match any offer. But instead of playing it safe, they just didn't bother. No qualifying offer, no fallback. They let him become an unrestricted free agent with zero control over where he landed next. Fast forward, ESPN called this Cleveland's biggest roster mistake of the decade. Not missing a draft pick, not a bad trade, letting Hartenstein walk for nothing. Because he didn't just survive after leaving, he flourished. He became a dependable defensive anchor, a high IQ big who contributed on playoff teams and eventually won a title. Cleveland gave up a young, cheap, ascending center for absolutely nothing. It wasn't a salary cap crunch. It wasn't roster overflow. They just let him go. And that decision aged horribly. While the Cavs spent years juggling front court depth, Hartenstein became exactly the kind of role player teams chase every summer. When you get value from a trade, see flashes of upside, then immediately cut ties, that's not just a missed opportunity. It's a self-inflicted L that keeps echoing through every highlight he makes in another jersey. Bulls imploded after Jordan's second retirement. In 1998, Chicago finished off their 6th championship with a second three-peat under Phil Jackson, powered by Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman. Then it all fell apart. Jackson walked away after his contract ended, refusing to coach a rebuilding team. Jordan followed, announcing his second retirement in January of 1999, right before a lockout-shortened season began. What came next was chaos. Pippen got traded to Houston. Rodman signed with the Lakers. Steve Kerr, Luke Longley, Judd Boettcher, and Scott Burrell all left too. The roster was gutted, and behind the scenes, the front office tension between Jackson and GM Jerry Krause boiled over, splitting the team from the inside. The 98-99 season was only 50 games long. Chicago won 13 of them, 13-37. That was the record. They missed the playoffs for the first time since 1984 and set a modern-era record by scoring just 49 points in a single game. At one point, they didn't even have enough players under contract to run a full practice. From dynasty to disaster in less than a year. It wasn't just the end of a great run, it was a crash landing. Randy Brown, who was on that last title team, said the group could have won a 4th straight if they'd stayed together. But instead, the Bulls broke the machine and spent years trying to rebuild it. No Jordan, no Jackson, just 13 wins and a giant L. Wizards drafted Johnny Davis over Jalen Williams. In 2022, Washington had the 10th overall pick and went with Johnny Davis out of Wisconsin. 2 picks later, Oklahoma City took Jalen Williams from Santa Clara. Today, that choice looks like one of the most brutal draft decisions of the decade. Davis came in with high hopes after averaging nearly 20 points in college, but he never found a rhythm in the NBA. In 3 seasons, he averaged just 3.5 points per game on poor shooting splits. He was eventually traded, waived, and now plays in the G League, without logging a single minute for Memphis. Meanwhile, Jalen Williams became a rising star almost overnight. He made the all-rookie first team, earned an all-star nod, and played a key role in helping the Thunder win a title. His mix of scoring, defense, and playmaking turned him into one of the biggest steals of that draft class. They didn't just miss on a prospect, they passed on a future all-star and NBA champion for a player who couldn't stick in a rotation. This wasn't a case of hindsight bias. It was a blown opportunity with franchise-level consequences. The Wizards could have had a dynamic wing to build around. Instead, they drafted a guard who flamed out fast. When a team gets leapfrogged in their own draft window, that's an L that sticks. Bucks drafted Joe Alexander 8th overall. In 2008, Milwaukee used their top 10 pick on a raw, athletic forward out of West Virginia. Joe Alexander was seen as a high upside project, and the Bucks bet big. But that bet aged fast. and badly. His rookie season was flat. In 59 games off the bench, Alexander averaged just 4.7 points and 1.9 rebounds. Not exactly what you want from a lottery pick. The worst part, the team didn't even wait around to see if he'd grow. Before his second season even began, Milwaukee declined his third-year option. That's nearly unheard of for a top 10 pick. The message was clear. They were already done. Alexander became one of the rare lottery picks to be let go that early, and it cemented his place on every Bucks draft bust list. He later called the team dramatically irresponsible for pulling the plug that fast. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. Most teams give their rookies more than one shot. Looking back, Milwaukee passed on several stronger options, including Brook Lopez, who was drafted just a few spots later and would eventually play a key role on their championship team. But at the time, they gambled on potential and pulled the plug in record time. Alexander's quick flameout became a warning for franchises drafting based on athletic ceiling without a plan for development. When you use a top pick and cut bait before year 2, that's not just a bust. It's a full-speed L with no brakes. Lee Mayberry had the lowest career win percentage ever, over nearly 500 NBA games. The teams he played for went 139 and 357. That's a 28 win percentage, the lowest in league history for any player with at least 400 games played. He suited up for the Milwaukee Bucks and later the Vancouver Grizzlies during some of their toughest years. It wasn't always about him. He was a steady presence, played his role, but the losing followed everywhere. 70% of the games he played in ended with the wrong scoreboard. To be clear, Mayberry wasn't a stat chaser or a locker room problem. He just happened to land in rough situations year after year. But records don't care about context. That 28% mark stuck, and now it's part of his legacy, whether he likes it or not. It's rare to see a player cross the 400 game mark and still finish with that kind of track record. Most guys with win rates that low don't last that long. Mayberry did. That makes it sting a little more. When you combine longevity with historic losing, it becomes one of the more quietly brutal L stats in NBA history. Not flashy, just relentlessly bad. Knicks signed Evan Fournier to a 4-year deal. In August 2021, New York brought in Fournier from the Celtics through a sign and trade deal. They also picked up 2 future second-round picks in the process. The contract, 4 years, with the total value reported between $73 and $78 million, depending on the source. The 4th year came with a team option. Spotrac listed it at $73 million, while other outlets cited $78. Either way, it was one of the larger free agent commitments of that offseason. The Knicks were banking on Fournier's scoring and shooting to boost their offense after a surprisingly strong season the year before. But that contract quickly became a frequent point of criticism. The numbers raised eyebrows almost immediately, not because Fournier wasn't a capable player, but because of how inconsistent the fit was from the start. The deal structure gave the team some flexibility by including the option on the final year, but the overall price tag limited other moves. This wasn't just a signing, it was a statement. New York had cap space and used a big chunk of it on Fournier. Whether it was 73 or 78 million, the commitment was massive, and as time went on, the deal's value became harder to justify. When a contract size is debated and criticized before year 2 even begins, that's not just risky, it's a front office L waiting to happen. Timberwolves. Unfortunate record. The Minnesota Timberwolves have taken more L's than any other franchise in league history. As of the most recent numbers, they've won 1,196 regular season games and lost 1,680. That gives them a win percentage of .416, the lowest ever recorded for a current team in the league. No matter which source you check, the outcome's the same. They've lived at the bottom of the win column for decades. Even older stats confirm it. One widely referenced list once had them sitting at 980 wins and 1,496 losses, dragging their win percentage all the way down to .396. That's barely competitive. And it didn't go unnoticed. One report didn't just label them as bad, it went as far as calling them the worst franchise in all of American pro sports. That's across every league. They've only made it as far as the Western Conference Finals. Besides that, a whole lot of nothing, year after year. Before the last 2 years, they've been stuck watching other teams play deep into the spring. Fans have held out hope, especially during recent years, but that ugly all-time record hangs over everything. No matter how good things might look now, the numbers don't lie. Minnesota's long history of setbacks has been rough, and honestly, digging through these stats felt like sifting through a highlight reel of what not to do in professional basketball. John Monken, shooting struggles. John Mankin owns a record no player wants. He holds the lowest career field goal percentage in league history, based on the standard of at least 2,000 missed shots. His percentage, just 27.2. That's right. Over a 7-year career, he consistently missed more than 7 out of every 10 shots. He played from the late 1940s into the early 50s, bouncing around the league like a guy trying to find the exit in a funhouse. He suited up for teams like the Royals, Capitals, Bullets, Jets, Pistons, Blackhawks, Celtics, and Olympians. That's 8 different uniforms, and not one could help his shooting touch. Across 414 games, Monken averaged 10.5 minutes, 5.8 points, 2.9 rebounds, and just over 1 assist. But what stands out, and not in a good way, is that he managed to take over 3,500 shots and made barely over a quarter of them. Now sure, that era was not known for efficiency, but even players with reputations for rough shooting like Joe Fulks still finished with a higher percentage. Fulks landed at 30.2%, which was bad, but at least it broke 30. The thing is, Monken kept getting minutes, kept launching shots, and somehow never got better at it. It's not just a tough stat, it's a brutal legacy. When people talk about cold hands, this is what they mean. His percentage is locked in the record books for all the wrong reasons. Yinka Dare's assist drought. Yinka Dare might go down as one of the most infamous passers in league history, mostly because he just never did it. Drafted 14th overall in 1994 by the New Jersey Nets, expectations were sky high. But Dare's time on the floor quickly became known for one glaring stat: 0 assists. In the 1995 to 96 season, he played in 58 games and logged 626 minutes without recording a single assist, not one. During that same stretch, he committed 72 turnovers. Let that sink in. He had more giveaways than some players have buckets in a season, and no assists to show for it. His first recorded assist didn't happen until the following year. That's right, after 77 games and about 770 minutes, he finally passed the ball to someone who actually scored. It took that long. Across 110 career games, Dare ended with just 4 assists and 96 turnovers. That's a turnover to assist ratio of 16-1. It's hard to even wrap your head around that. Plenty of players struggle to distribute, but Dare turned it into an art form. A center with size, playing real minutes, who nearly avoided assists like it was a rule. It's not just a rough stat, it's a part of basketball trivia that gets passed down, because nobody can believe it's real. Yinka's drought is a reminder that passing matters. Unless you were him, apparently. Jerome James's costly contract. Jerome James went from playoff surprise to financial regret almost overnight. In the 2005 playoffs with Seattle, he shocked everyone by averaging 12.5 points, 6.8 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks over 11 games. His run against Sacramento stood out most. 17 points and 9 boards per game had front offices buzzing. The New York Knicks bit hard that summer. They handed James a 5-year contract worth nearly $30 million. Thomas, running the show at the time, clearly believed that brief stretch meant big potential. But James didn't come close to delivering. With New York, he averaged just 2.5 points and under 2 rebounds in 90 games. His production cratered. He struggled with conditioning, missed training camp out of shape, and even got suspended in January 2006 for showing up unprepared. The promise that came with that contract vanished fast. By the end of his Knicks stint, he'd barely played. Only 4 games across the 2007 to 2009 seasons, while still collecting a massive paycheck. That's not just disappointing, it's franchise-level damage. The regret around the league became legend. Analysts, fans, and even Thomas himself called it one of the worst deals ever. James had one hot streak, and the Knicks paid as if it would last 5 years. It didn't. That contract's still remembered as a caution sign for every team chasing playoff hype over proven consistency. LaRue Martin, draft day blunder. In 1972, the Portland Trail Blazers held the top pick, and they used it on LaRue Martin. Ahead of them on the board, Bob McAdoo and Julius Erving. Yes, that Julius Erving. The selection quickly became one of the league's most criticized first overall picks. Martin's pro career didn't live up to the hype. Over 4 seasons, he averaged 5.3 points, 4.6 rebounds, and under 1 assist across 271 games. Meanwhile, McAdoo won Rookie of the Year, became a league MVP, took home multiple scoring titles, and finished with 2 championships. Erving turned into a basketball icon. The contrast is brutal. One franchise passed up 2 Hall of Fame legends and ended up with a player who quietly exited the league before reaching his prime. His numbers weren't just low for a top pick, they were among the worst for any number 1 selection in league history. But off the court, That's where Martin flipped the script. After basketball, he built a successful career at UPS, eventually becoming the Illinois District Public Affairs and Community Services Manager. He's spoken openly about life after the game, reminding everyone that sports aren't everything. While fans might see his name on lists of draft mistakes, Martin doesn't carry it like a burden. He's proud of the title and prouder of what came next. Not every story is about stats. Sometimes it's about what you do after the buzzer sounds and the cameras stop rolling. Level 1. Just okay. Dennis Smith Jr. came into the league with top 10 pick expectations. He was the 9th overall pick in the 2017 draft, and Dallas saw him as a possible franchise guard. In college, at NC State, his stats were impressive. He averaged over 17 points, almost 10 assists, nearly 7 boards, and more than 2 steals. That should have been a red flag, honestly, because it screamed high usage, empty calorie numbers. He made the all-rookie team, sure, but that was the peak. After that, he bounced between teams like he was on a basketball road trip with no GPS. He never became the kind of starter you could rely on, let alone build around. Players like Donovan Mitchell went later in that draft, and yeah, that comparison doesn't help his case. Michael Beasley, 2nd overall in 2008. That's the kind of draft position where you expect a player to at least fake being a star for a couple seasons. But no, Beasley had the scoring talent, he really did. But his impact never came close to his hype. The guy averaged over 26 points in college and then delivered a totally fine 12 points per game across his NBA career. He played for more teams than a substitute teacher. Miami, Minnesota, Phoenix, Houston, New York, Los Angeles, and some international stops for good measure. He had a good rookie season and even made the all-rookie team, but the consistency was never there. And when you remember Russell Westbrook and Kevin Love went later in that same draft, it makes Beasley's status as just okay feel like a mercy. Dion Waiters, another lottery case of what could have been 4th pick in the 2012 draft. That was Cleveland trying to grab a dynamic scorer. And to be fair, Dion did have some stretches where he looked like he could cook. Problem was, his shot selection was basically roulette, and his defense was optional. He had some fun moments with the Heat and the Thunder, and even won a title with the Lakers, but it's not like he was leading the charge. After him came Damian Lillard. And yeah, if you're a Cavs fan, that fact probably still stings. Evan Turner was the 2nd overall pick in the 2010 draft. That means he got picked before DeMarcus Cousins, Gordon Hayward, and Paul George, which is like ordering a sandwich and getting a soggy napkin instead. At Ohio State, he looked like a can't-miss player. National Player of the Year, all the awards, all the hype. But in the NBA, he turned into a very average role player. He did a little bit of everything, but didn't do anything particularly well. He lasted over 700 games, which is something, but that's not what teams hope for when they use a 2nd overall pick. Cody Zeller was picked 4th in the 2013 draft, and you can almost hear the groans from Charlotte fans echoing through time. He had a respectable college run at Indiana, shot a ridiculous percentage, and looked like he could be a solid big. And that's exactly what he was. Solid. Not special, not exciting, just solid. He averaged about 8 points and 6 rebounds over his career and had a few seasons where he flirted with double-double territory. But again, when you're drafted that high, serviceable rotation guy just doesn't cut it. Chris Dunn was taken 5th in 2016, and his college resume was packed with awards. Big East Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year. He came in like a defensive savior. But in the NBA, it was all too up and down. Injuries, role changes, switching teams. It never quite clicked. He showed flashes of defensive intensity and had a few decent runs, but he never cemented himself as a go-to point guard. Other picks from that draft surpassed him quickly, and it just added to the feeling that Dunn didn't quite reach the level he needed to. And then there's Cantor, picked 3rd in 2011. That's the kind of pick you use for a big man who changes your interior game. Cantor did bring strong rebounding and scoring. In over 700 games, he put up over 11 points and nearly 8 rebounds per night. But his defense was a turnstile. Opponents saw him in the paint and just walked through like they had a key. He had moments of dominance on the boards, but he was never going to anchor a defense. And that limited his role across multiple teams. Picked after him were Tristan Thompson and Jonas Valanciunas, both of whom arguably brought more complete games to the league. All these guys had moments. They weren't disasters. They didn't vanish into the shadows of the G League or overseas by year 2. But when your name gets called that high in the draft, teams want more than flashes and box score fillers. They want impact. They want something memorable. Instead, they got just okay. By the way, if you guys enjoy these deep dives, I'll be posting every day. I genuinely appreciate if you could subscribe. Thanks. Anyways, Level 2. Injury busts. Markelle Fultz was the first overall pick in the 2017 draft, and things went sideways fast. He looked like a star at Washington, putting up big numbers and showing all the tools. But then before he could even get going in the NBA, his shoulder broke down. A strange scapular imbalance ruined his shot mechanics. And later, he was diagnosed with thoracic outlet syndrome. That's a rare nerve condition, and it completely wrecked his ability to shoot. The Sixers tried to fix it, but the damage was done. He missed major time, bounced to Orlando, and even tore his ACL in 2021. He had talent, no doubt, but his body betrayed him. When you see guys like Jason Tatum and Donovan Mitchell go later in that same draft, you start to understand why people shake their heads when Fultz's name comes up. Jabari Parker was supposed to be Milwaukee's next big star. He was the second pick in 2014, fresh off Antite. Impressive year at Duke. He got off to a good start, but tore his ACL just 25 games into his rookie season. Then, when it looked like he was finally turning the corner in 2017, he tore the same ACL again. After that, it was a mess. Knee issues, foot problems, shoulder tweaks, you name it. Before those injuries, he was putting up 20 points a game and looking like a legitimate scoring threat. After them, he just couldn't stay on the floor. Joel Embiid went one spot after him. And while Embiid had his own health battles, he became the superstar Parker never got the chance to be. Greg Oden was picked first overall in 2007. That's a big deal. You're expected to anchor a team for a decade. But Oden missed his entire rookie season with knee surgery, and that was just the beginning. He kept having surgeries, kept missing seasons, and basically played a few flashes between long rehab stints. His knees just couldn't handle the NBA grind. Meanwhile, the next pick was Kevin Durant, who turned into one of the best players ever. So yeah, the disappointment hit hard. Oden didn't fail because of effort or attitude. His body just gave up before he ever had a chance. Sam Bowie is one of the earliest examples of injury changing everything. Picked second in the legendary 1984 draft, Bowie went ahead of Michael Jordan. Let that sink in. And it's not like Portland was completely clueless. Bowie had shown real promise at Kentucky, but he already had a history of leg injuries in college, and the problems only got worse in the NBA. Multiple leg fractures, missed seasons, and constant pain meant he never became what they hoped. He put up decent stats when healthy, but when healthy, didn't happen often enough. Lonzo Ball went second overall in 2017. He had great instincts, vision, defense, and was a solid shooter after refining his form. But his knees have been the story. He had a meniscus tear, multiple procedures, and most recently, a cartilage transplant. That's the kind of surgery you usually hear about in medical journals, not NBA reports. The Lakers bet big on him, and injuries have made that pick look like a gamble that never cashed out. Nerlens Noel had top pick buzz coming out of Kentucky, but he tore his ACL before the draft. That caused him to slide to 6th in 2013, and he missed his first NBA season entirely. He was a solid shot blocker and defender, but he never developed into an offensive threat or high-minute anchor. That knee injury slowed his development, and by the time he got on the court, he just couldn't reach the ceiling people thought he had. Jay Williams had one season in the league after being picked second in 2002. He looked promising, smart passer, aggressive scorer, and the Bulls hoped he'd be their guy. Then came the motorcycle crash. No helmet, multiple leg injuries, and nerve damage. Just like that, his career was done. He never played another NBA game. That wasn't a slow fade, it was a full stop. Johnny Flynn looked solid his rookie year after going 6th in the 2009 draft. He averaged over 13 points, started most of the season, and looked like a long-term point guard. Then came hip surgery. After that, everything fell off a cliff. His scoring dropped, his mobility changed, and by year 3, he was already out of the league. He was picked right before Steph Curry. So yeah, that hurts. Injuries took away whatever chance he had to grow. Injuries don't care where you're drafted, how much hype you've got, or what your ceiling looks like on paper. This group shows exactly how fast potential can unravel when bodies just won't cooperate. From knees to shoulders to rare nerve conditions, each story feels like a career, stuck in a holding pattern that never cleared for takeoff. Level 3, backups. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist was drafted 2nd overall in the 2012 draft, and he came in with expectations of being an elite two-way wing. He had athleticism, size, and a high motor coming out of Kentucky, but the offense never showed up. His jump shot was more of a science experiment, and teams eventually stopped bothering to guard him on the perimeter. He had a long stint with Charlotte, signed a big extension, but settled into more of a defensive role player than any sort of high-impact starter. The numbers never jumped off the page, under 9 points a game across his career, and the flashes of development just didn't materialize. That's not what you want from a second overall pick. Derek Williams went second overall in the 2011 draft, and if you blinked, you might have missed the hype. He was a standout at Arizona, a versatile forward who could stretch the floor, but in the NBA, he never carved out a real identity. Was he a power forward, a small forward, a bench scorer? He moved around the league, showed occasional scoring outbursts, but mostly lived in the rotation. He averaged under 9 points and 4 rebounds a game, which is fine for a mid-first rounder, not for a second overall pick. Dante Exum was the mystery man from Australia, taken 5th overall in 2014 by Utah. People thought they were getting a do-it-all point guard with length and upside. What they got was a career full of injuries, role shifts, and questions. He played defense well at times, had a few good playoff stretches, but never became a starting caliber guard. His averages stayed low, his minutes stayed limited, and eventually he took his game overseas for stretches before coming back. He was useful, sure, but never close to what a top 5 pick should look like. Patrick Williams came into the league as the 4th overall pick in 2020. Chicago took a swing on upside, banking on his defensive tools and potential to grow offensively. But through his first few seasons, he's looked more like a quiet role player than a rising star. His scoring hovered around 10 points per game. He missed time with injuries, and his usage kept shrinking. When you're picked that high, the hope is you evolve into something more than a 4th option who might guard the other team's best wing. Instead, he's mostly become a placeholder starter who sometimes fades into the back. Bismack went 7th overall in the 2011 draft and somehow stuck around the league for over a decade by doing exactly one thing well: defense. He blocked shots, rebounded, set screens, and didn't ask for the ball much. That's great. If you're picked in the 20s, for a top 7 pick, it's underwhelming. He had one big playoff run with Toronto that got him paid, but his offensive game stayed stuck at 0. Teams knew what they were getting, and what they were getting was limited. Bill McGill was the 1st overall pick way back in 1962, and let's just say it didn't go as planned. He was a scoring machine in college, but his pro career ended up being short and mostly forgettable. He bounced around between the NBA and ABA, averaged around 10 points, and never got close to being a franchise player. As a number 1 pick, that outcome lands him squarely in the backup tier. He had talent, but it never translated into long-term success. Zach Collins was drafted 10th in 2017 and started out with real promise. Portland traded up to get him, hoping he'd be their modern big. He had range, size, and some defensive pop, but then came the injuries. He missed a massive chunk of his early career, and even when he played, he rarely looked like more than a bench piece. His averages stayed modest, and although he's hung around, he never became the starter they imagined on draft night. Austin Rivers went 10th in the 2012 draft and brought a name with him. His dad was an NBA coach, and he had big moments in college, but in the league, he mostly bounced around, carving out a career as a bench scorer and energy guard. He had some good games here and there, but never made a leap. For a top 10 pick, his numbers were mild, around 8 points and 2 assists per game. Teams liked his confidence more than his consistency. Alex Len was picked 5th overall in the 2013 draft, and his path was clear: be a dominant center. Instead, he became a journeyman big man. He never developed into a high-level scorer, and while he had size, he was rarely the kind of anchor teams build around. His career averages hovered around 6 points and 5 rebounds, and he played for several teams who needed size, but not much else. He had staying power, but not much star power. These 9 picks settled into modest roles, with limited scoring, shrinking usage, and careers defined by rotation minutes instead of stardom. Level 4, hated in their city. Ben Simmons might be the face of this category. Drafted 1st overall in 2016, Philadelphia expected a generational playmaker, a franchise-altering talent. What they got was a defensive specialist who refused to shoot. His early years were solid. Rookie of the Year, multiple All-Star nods, but the tension built slowly. Then came the playoffs. In 2021, Game 7, Hawks, wide open dunk, and he passed. That moment lived rent-free in the heads of Sixers fans from that day forward. He followed it up by skipping out on the next season, citing mental health concerns while clashing with the team, sitting out games, and forcing a trade. Philadelphia fans don't forget, and they definitely don't forgive. Add in his refusal to expand his offensive game, and you get a complete breakdown of trust. For a number 1 pick, Simmons' lack of leadership, his exit drama, and his refusal to evolve sealed his spot as one of the most frustrating figures in Sixers history. He's not just a bust, he's a franchise memory no one wants. Chris Washburn was taken 3rd overall in 1986 by Golden State, and the word disaster doesn't even cover it. He played in just 72 games total. 72. That's not even a full season and a half. His production was non-existent, just over 3 points and 2 rebounds per game. But it wasn't just his play. Washburn failed 3 drug tests and was banned for life from the league in 1989. This wasn't some sad tale of bad luck. It was complete implosion. Golden State fans had to watch their 3rd overall pick waste his opportunity, flame out spectacularly, and become a punchline in NBA history. There's no fondness, no redemption arc, just wasted potential and a permanent stain on the team's draft history. Josh Primo came into San Antonio as a surprise lottery pick, taken 12th overall in 2021. The Spurs shocked everyone by reaching early for a player they thought had long-term upside. Instead, they got an off-court disaster. Primo was waived after just 54 games, following allegations of inappropriate conduct, including repeatedly exposing himself to a team therapist. He was later suspended by the NBA. Fans were stunned, not just by what happened, but by how quickly it all collapsed. San Antonio rarely gets involved in messy situations, and Primo's situation was a PR nightmare. His time with the team is now a source of embarrassment and frustration. There was no payoff, just scandal. Jahlil Okafor was picked 3rd overall in 2015, and from day one, he was supposed to be the scoring big man that anchored the Sixers' rebuild. And for a brief moment, it looked like that might happen. But things unraveled fast. He struggled defensively, clashed with coaches, and looked lost in modern NBA schemes. Then came the off-court issues. Getting caught in a street fight in Boston, reckless driving across the Benjamin Franklin Bridge, trying to use a fake ID at a local bar, it all stacked up. Philly fans expect toughness, accountability, and some level of growth. Instead, Okafor gave them empty stats and viral headlines. The Sixers suspended him, and the fan base gave up on him just as fast. He wasn't just a bad pick. He became another symbol of the team's failed rebuilding years. Killian Hayes is the Detroit project that never came together. Drafted 7th overall in 2020, he was supposed to be the Pistons' point guard of the future. Instead, he became a walking frustration. He shot under 40% from the field, couldn't score consistently, and constantly looked overwhelmed on offense. He dealt with early injuries, but even when healthy, his game never developed. Pistons fans became brutal. Reddit threads mocked him. Memes about his shooting floated around like confetti. Even when Detroit was losing big, the loudest groans often came when Hayes was on the floor. The team finally gave up and waived him, and there wasn't a tear shed in the city. He's not hated because he was a bad person. He's hated because he represented yet another bad decision, another painful rebuild misfire. All 5 of these players weren't just busts. They left behind anger, disappointment, and scars in the cities that drafted them, whether through off-court issues, lack of development, or flat-out quitting. They all became reminders of what could have been, and why fans will never forget. Level 5 ruined their team. Andrea Bargnani was supposed to change everything for Toronto. He was the 1st overall pick in 2006 and the 1st European ever taken at the top spot. The Raptors thought they were getting a mobile 7-footer who could stretch the floor and bring modern offense to their front court. Instead, they got one of the most frustrating players in franchise history. Bargnani did score around 14 points per game in his career, but he was a black hole on defense, barely rebounded, and consistently posted negative on-off numbers. Despite being 7 feet tall, he pulled down less than 5 rebounds per game. The Raptors doubled down by giving him a $50 million extension in 2009. That locked them into years of trying to build around a player who didn't anchor anything. While other teams in that draft picked players like LaMarcus Aldridge, Toronto was stuck with a player who never became more than a volume scorer with serious gaps. His lack of development and high usage pulled resources and opportunities away from players who could have helped the team evolve. He didn't just disappoint, he stalled the franchise's growth, cost them cap space, and forced them into a hard reset. Marvin Bagley was taken 2nd overall by Sacramento in 2018, 1 spot ahead of Luka. That alone made the margin for error razor thin. Bagley showed flashes early on, with some decent scoring and rebounding as a rookie, but injuries hit hard and often. He never played more than 62 games in any season with the Kings, and his skill set didn't modernize. He couldn't protect the rim, couldn't consistently shoot from outside, and struggled with defense. Instead of adjusting, Sacramento kept trying to make it work. They extended him opportunities, playing time and investment that could have gone elsewhere. And while they were stuck waiting for Bagley to break out, Luka was becoming an MVP-level player. The pick became a symbol of missed opportunity, and the front office's commitment to him dragged the rebuild down. They weren't just wrong, They were locked into being wrong for years. By the time they moved on, the damage had already slowed their development, cost them credibility, and wasted crucial years of growth. Dragan Bender was a swing at upside. Phoenix drafted him 4th overall in 2016, expecting a skilled 7-footer who could dribble, shoot, and pass like a modern forward. But instead of a unicorn, they got a player who never averaged more than 6 points per game. His shooting was inconsistent, his defense was underwhelming, and his offensive instincts just didn't translate. For a top 4 pick, that's a huge problem. He played fewer than 200 games for the Suns, and they declined his 4th-year option. He never became a regular contributor, and by the time they moved on, the roster had already cycled through multiple failed lineups. Phoenix was in the middle of a long rebuild, and wasting a pick that high delayed everything. That selection could have been a long-term piece. Instead, it became a gap. Every year they spent trying to justify the pick was a year further from real progress. Nick Stauskas was supposed to bring shooting to Sacramento when they picked him 8th overall in 2014. He had been an All-American at Michigan, a big-time shooter with size, but it just never clicked. His shooting percentages never stabilized, and he couldn't create or defend at the level needed for his position. After 2 seasons, Sacramento moved on. But the problem wasn't just performance. It was that the Kings invested a top 10 pick in someone who never became more than a role player. That decision added to a string of misfires that left the roster spinning. Stauskas was part of a pattern where high picks gave no return, and the long-term consequence was stagnation. His name became just another item in a long list of missed chances. Thomas Robinson went 5th overall in 2012 to the Kings after a dominant season at Kansas. But in the NBA, he couldn't find a role. His motor was there, but his game never matured. In 3 seasons, he played for 5 teams. His stats hovered around 5 points and 5 rebounds per game. He had no shooting range, wasn't a consistent finisher, and didn't bring the defense needed to anchor a front court. Sacramento burned a top 5 pick and gave up quickly, but the damage stuck. Every bad draft call sets a team back, and this one was no exception. The Kings had other options, and instead they ended up moving a lottery pick for almost nothing. That kind of mistake hurts for years. All 5 of these picks weren't just bad, they actively set their teams back. They wasted prime draft capital, ate up salary cap, and kept their franchises stuck in rebuild mode. Whether it was through missed development, overinvestment, or opportunity cost, these players didn't just bust, they dragged their teams down with them. Level 6, historic bust. These are the guys who didn't just fall short of expectations, they fell off the map. Every one of them got drafted way too high, with teams hoping they'd become franchise stars. What they got instead? Some really rough stat lines, short careers, and years of regret. These aren't just regular disappointments, these are front office nightmares. Let's start with Adam Morrison. He got picked 3rd overall in 2006 by Charlotte. Coming out of Gonzaga, he was a scoring machine, leading the nation with over 28 points per game. So Charlotte figured they just picked up the next big thing. What they got instead was a player who never found his shot in the league, shooting just over 37% from the field. He averaged 7.5 points, 2.1 rebounds, and 1.4 assists per game. And then came the injury. Tearing his ACL right before year 3 basically erased any momentum he had. The biggest punch in the gut, though? Charlotte took Morrison 1 spot ahead of LaMarcus Aldridge. Imagine passing on a future All-Star for a guy who peaked in college. Hasheem Thabeet? Even tougher to explain. Memphis drafted him 2nd overall in 2009. He was a defensive monster at UConn, and the Grizzlies thought they'd found their rim protector of the future. But in the NBA, he never figured things out. He put up just 2.2 points and 2.7 rebounds in barely over 10 minutes per game. Eventually, they even sent him down to the developmental league, making him the highest draft pick ever demoted at that time. And while Thabeet was trying to stay on rosters, guys like James Harden and Steph Curry, who got picked right after, were lighting up the league. Brutal. Then there's Michael Olowokandi, the number 1 overall pick in 1998. The Clippers drafted him hoping he'd be their long-term centerpiece. And look, his college stats looked solid, over 22 points and 11 boards a game. But the pros? Completely different story. Across 500 games, he averaged just over 8 points and under 7 rebounds. He dealt with injuries, especially knee problems, but even when healthy, he never became anything close to a dominant center. The Clippers passed on guys like Dirk Nowitzki and Paul Pierce for this pick, the kind of decision that keeps executives up at night. Next is LaRue Martin, 1st overall pick in 1972. That's right, number 1. Portland thought they were getting a franchise-altering big man, Instead, they got a player who lasted just over 270 games in the league, averaging 5.3 points and 4.6 rebounds. The worst part, they could have had Bob McAdoo. Instead, they got a guy who was out of the league after 4 seasons. People still bring up Martin whenever draft busts come up, and that's saying something, considering how long ago it was. James Wiseman is the most recent name on this list. Golden State took him second overall in 2020, right in the middle of trying to stay in contention. This means they had Steph Curry with LaMelo Ball. The potential was there for Wiseman, no doubt. He was a top high school prospect and had big expectations from the jump, but injuries came fast. First a torn meniscus, then a torn Achilles. And even when he played, he struggled to find rhythm or carve out a real role. Across 149 games, he averaged just over 9 points and 5.5 rebounds. For a number 2 pick, that's not going to cut it, especially when there were other prospects available who've already turned into strong contributors. And then there's Nicolas Skitishvili. Denver made him the 5th overall pick in 2002, hoping his size and shooting touch would translate. It didn't, at all. He averaged just 2.9 points per game, shot barely over 30% from the field, and played in only 172 games. He's one of those names that pops up in every worst draft pick list, not just because he underperformed, but because Denver missed out on actual stars while gambling on a mystery pick. Skitishvili is what happens when a team buys into potential without evidence. What all these guys have in common is the distance between expectation and reality. They weren't just average, they were out of place, out of sync, and out of the league way too fast. Their team spent top 5 picks hoping to change the future, but ended up stuck in the past, watching other franchises build around the stars they passed over. When you talk about historic busts, these are the names you bring up, because the mistakes were big, the opportunity cost was massive, and the results were unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. Level 7, all-time worst. These are the absolute bottom of the barrel, not just disappointing, historically disastrous. These are the picks that haunt general managers and live forever in every draft night horror montage. Teams didn't just get it wrong, they set their franchises back years. Let's start with Anthony Bennett, first overall pick in 2013. Cleveland was on the clock and stunned everybody by grabbing Bennett out of UNLV. He'd averaged around 16 points and 8 rebounds in college, and there was some intrigue around his athleticism and shooting touch. But as soon as he hit the NBA floor, it was clear something wasn't clicking. He looked completely lost his rookie year, putting up just over 4 points and 3 rebounds per game in barely 13 minutes. That set the tone. He played a total of 151 games across 4 forgettable seasons. No upward trend, no breakout, nothing. He finished with career averages of 4.4 points and 3.1 rebounds. That's not just bad for a number 1 pick. It's almost unheard of. And let's not ignore what Cleveland passed up. Victor Oladipo went second and became a 2-time All-Star. But the real gut punch came at pick 15, Giannis, a 2-time MVP, finals champion, and one of the greatest talents of the modern era. Cleveland could have had him. Instead, they got one of the least productive top picks in league history. Bennett's name is now synonymous with front office whiffs. Every year around draft time, his pick comes up like clockwork. Now let's talk about Kwame Brown. Washington took him first overall in 2001. He made history by becoming the first high school player ever drafted with the top pick. And with Michael Jordan calling the shots for the Wizards, the spotlight was massive. Brown was supposed to be a dominant physical force. Coming out of Glenn Academy, he averaged around 20 points, 13 rebounds, and nearly 6 blocks. But when the games started counting, the numbers weren't even close. His rookie season, 4.5 points and 3.5 boards per game. Over 12 seasons, he settled at career averages of 6.6 points and 5.5 rebounds. To be clear, he stayed in the league for over a decade, so it's not like he vanished, but that just made his underwhelming production more glaring. When you're picked number 1 overall and can't even crack double digits in points or rebounds, it's going to follow you forever. Washington passed on Tyson Chandler at number 2 and Powell at number 3. Both ended up with far better careers. And then later in the same class, Tony Parker and Joe Johnson. Washington didn't just swing and miss. They struck out while watching future All-Stars go elsewhere. But nobody, and I mean nobody, gets people's heads shaken like Darko Milicic. Taken second overall in the absolutely loaded 2003 draft by the Detroit Pistons, LeBron James went first. Then came Darko. That means Detroit picked him ahead of Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, and D. Wade. Let that sink in. That's 3 Hall of Fame careers, all passed over for a player who ended up averaging 6 points and 4.2 rebounds. Detroit saw potential. They wanted a big man to develop, while the core chased the title. And yeah, they did win it all in 2004, but Darko barely saw the floor. He didn't contribute to that run, and his development never took off. He bounced from team to team: Orlando, Memphis, New York, Minnesota, Boston, and never carved out a role. His best season? Around 8.8 points and 5 boards in Minnesota for a second overall pick. That's nowhere near enough. The opportunity cost is almost impossible to overstate. Detroit could have had Carmelo scoring in bunches, Wade slashing through defenses, or Bosh anchoring the front court. Instead, they chose a project who never came close to panning out, and the fallout lasted years. Every time fans talk about the greatest draft classes of all time, the Pistons are the cautionary tale, right in the middle of it. What separates these three from other busts is how high they were picked and how little they delivered in return. This isn't about injuries or tragic circumstances. These guys got opportunities and just didn't live up to what their draft slot demanded. Number 1 and number 2 picks are supposed to be future all-stars, faces of franchises. These guys barely reached role player status, or never got close. Bennett had no clear skill that translated. Brown had all the tools physically, but couldn't turn them into results. Darko was a gamble that blew up right in the front office's face, and all three of them were taken ahead of players who became stars. That's what seals it. It's not just that they underperformed, it's that their teams missed on generational talent while investing in them. These are not just busts, they're time capsules of regret, picks that shaped franchise history in the worst way. When teams gamble at the top of the draft, the stakes are massive, and these three, they remind everyone how quickly a bet can turn into a franchise-wide disaster. LeBron James versus Lance Stevenson. This was one of those matchups where the rivalry didn't need hype. It built itself. Their clashes in the Eastern Conference playoffs from 2012 through 2018 had just enough chaos to keep fans locked in. The first spark, that choking gesture from Stevenson after LeBron missed some free throws. And that set the tone. Stevenson made it his personal mission to poke, prod, and irritate. And LeBron, at least at first, refused to give it attention. That didn't stop anything. It only got weirder. By 2014, the ear-blowing moment dropped into NBA history like a prank at a job interview. Stevenson leaned over and literally blew into LeBron's ear during live play. It didn't earn him a foul, but it earned him a permanent place in highlight reels. He even said later that he regretted it, not because of LeBron, but because of the memes. Yeah, fans really ran with that one. And it wasn't just that. Stevenson tapped LeBron's face, played rough, drew technicals, and even got shoved by LeBron in 2018. That series had both of them reacting, verbally and physically. And referees were on high alert. They definitely didn't fake the tension. Stevenson called LeBron's trash talk weak. LeBron called Stevenson dirty. And sure, neither of them said it was personal, but those games got heated. The crazy part, they ended up as teammates on the Lakers. Stevenson said he thought it was funny. And honestly, same. No long-term drama, just playoff energy that boiled over. Shaq versus Kobe, two of the biggest names in basketball, sharing one court, but rarely the spotlight. From 1996 to 2004, they were the heart of the Lakers, reaching 4 finals and winning 3 straight titles. But behind all that dominance, things weren't exactly peaceful. Both wanted to be the guy. Shaq brought power and presence, while Kobe lived in the gym and pushed himself past every limit. That clash of styles never really smoothed out. Kobe was obsessed with discipline. Shaq, not so much. Kobe called him out for slacking in conditioning, especially in 2003. That didn't sit well. Then came the legal tension. During Kobe's 2003 situation, he made comments dragging Shaq into it, saying Shaq had paid women to stay quiet. Shaq denied it, and that crossed the line. Things got way more personal. The locker room split. By 2004, players were picking sides. The Lakers had to make a choice, and they sent Shaq to Miami. But even after that, stories came out about practice scuffles and heated moments. They still balled out though, grabbing all-star spots and championships together. That alley-oop to seal a playoff series, legendary. Years later, Kobe apologized publicly for what he said. Shaq admitted the media blew some of it up, but also said they had real disagreements. They both look back with more maturity, even praising each other in interviews. No one denies they clashed, but no one denies they won either. 3 titles, 3 finals MVPs for Shaq, and a partnership that defined a decade, even if it nearly blew up the team along the way. Dwight Howard versus Van Gundy. This one wasn't just messy, it unfolded live in front of reporters. In April of 2012, Stan Van Gundy told the media that Magic management said Dwight wanted him gone. Mid-interview, Dwight walked up, put his arm around Stan and said he never asked for him to be fired. Same press conference, same microphones, completely different stories. Then that night, Dwight had just 8 points and 8 rebounds against the Knicks. It didn't help the situation. Within weeks, Stan was out. The team also parted ways with general manager Otis Smith. Magic leadership later said Dwight didn't directly ask for Stan's firing, but they did acknowledge serious tension. Dwight later called that press conference the worst day of his life. No off-court fight, no name calling, just a total collapse of trust and communication. Around the same time, Dwight was in trade talks. He asked out, then opted into 1 more year, and then finally got moved to the Lakers. That whole stretch turned chaotic fast. And then there's Jeff Van Gundy, not Dwight's coach, just an analyst with opinions. In 2013, Jeff publicly called Dwight's Lakers behavior immature and passive-aggressive. He said Dwight's attitude affected the team, criticized his offensive game, and questioned his focus. That wasn't personal. It was professional analysis, plain and direct. Factually, Dwight never said he hated either of them. Stan said Dwight wanted him out. Dwight denied it, and the team unraveled. Jeff never worked with Dwight, but saw enough to comment. No punches, no screaming, no drama outside what's on record. Just friction, frustration, and one very awkward moment with microphones that still gets brought up over a decade later. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Patrick Beverley versus Russell Westbrook. This rivalry had real staying power. It started in 2013 during the playoffs. Beverley dove for a loose ball while Westbrook was calling timeout, and the contact tore Westbrook's meniscus. Just like that, his postseason ended. The Thunder had 60 wins, title hopes, and then lost their point guard. That moment stuck. Fast forward a year. Beverley went after the ball again during another timeout, and things got heated all over again. Technicals flew. Then came 2017, more confrontation. 2018, double technicals after Beverley dove near Westbrook's legs. Westbrook hit a bucket and mocked him with the rock the baby move. The crowd loved it. The tension didn't stop. In 2019, Westbrook waved goodbye after Beverley fouled out. Picked up another technical just for the sarcasm. Then came the quote. After a big game, Westbrook told reporters, "Pat Bev trick, y'all, man. He don't guard nobody." That one stung. Beverley said later that it hurt his career. People treated him different. Players, coaches, fans. He said it stuck to him unfairly. Over the years, they clashed in over 30 games. Beverley's teams actually had the winning record, but the rivalry wasn't just about wins. It was personal, emotional, and public. It wasn't just trash talk. Coaches and media all called it bad blood. Then came the twist. In 2022, they became Lakers teammates. At Beverley's intro presser, the only teammate who showed up was Westbrook. That shift told its own story. For a rivalry built on injuries, texts, and public shots, their handshake as teammates brought everything full circle. Joel Embiid versus Ben Simmons. This one played out in real time, on the floor, in press conferences, and across team statements. It started with that 2021 playoff loss. The Sixers were the top seed, but Simmons had just 5 points in Game 7. Embiid referenced a wide-open dunk Simmons passed up as a major turning point. That one play got talked about everywhere. Then came the holdout. Simmons refused to show up for training camp that fall and asked for a trade. He skipped games, practices, and meetings. The Sixers fined him more than $10 million, the most ever for a single player. The season got chaotic, fast. Embiid didn't hold back either. He called it borderline disrespectful, especially to teammates who were showing up every day. But at the same time, he denied they had personal issues. He said he loved playing with Simmons, didn't want fans or media to stir it up, and hoped Simmons would come back. Simmons, on the other hand, admitted they weren't close off the court, saying you're not cool with everyone, but still pointed out they had great moments together. In February 2022, Simmons got traded to Brooklyn. That ended their run as teammates. Later reports said Simmons reached out, trying to patch things up. There were no public insults, no personal attacks, no evidence of hate, just frustration, professional fallout, and some brutally honest interviews. Embiid wanted Simmons back. Simmons wanted out. The rift was never about name calling. It was about basketball, expectations, and one giant standoff that never really recovered until it was over. Chris Paul versus Rajon Rondo. This one had history, hostility, and a mouthguard. It started in 2008 when Paul made the Olympic roster and Rondo didn't, even after winning a title with the Celtics. That left a mark. In 2009, Rondo rubbed it in by telling Paul, "I've got a ring and you're never gonna win one. Yeah, things didn't exactly warm up from there. Then came the jaw-dropping moment in 2018. Lakers versus Rockets. After a scuffle broke out on court, Paul and Rondo exchanged words. Paul said Rondo spit on him. Rondo denied it, said he had a mouth guard in, and accused Paul of playing victim. Paul pointed a finger in Rondo's face. Rondo punched him. Paul punched back. The league stepped in fast. Rondo got 3 games, Paul got 2. That wasn't the first time they tangled. In 2009, both got texts for jawing at each other. Through the years, Rondo kept throwing jabs, verbal and physical. Paul responded with his usual intensity. Then came Rondo's immediate comment. He called Paul a horrible teammate and questioned his leadership. Paul never went after Rondo publicly in the same way, but made it clear the spit was a line crossed. They faced off 29 times. Rondo's teams won 15 of those. Stat-wise, Paul dominated. More points, assists, and steals. But Rondo had the edge in playoff win. Over time, the fire cooled. They both acknowledged the rivalry, and Rondo even admitted they had some similarities. But that Olympic snub, that fight, and that comment about the ring, that stuff doesn't vanish. It just fades with age, a few suspensions, and time. Russell Westbrook versus Kevin Durant. It started as one of the league's most explosive duos. From 2007 to 2016, they ran Oklahoma City together, making the NBA Finals in 2012 and stacking deep playoff runs. Durant once called Westbrook genuine, highlighting their shared work ethic. But behind that, there were signs of friction, especially as the offense tilted toward Westbrook's heavy ball usage. Then came the break. On July 4th, 2016, Durant left for the Warriors, a team that had just won 73 games. That decision sent shockwaves. He didn't give a farewell press conference. No heads up, just gone. Westbrook became the guy in Oklahoma City, and the media had a field day building a rivalry. Westbrook never publicly blasted Durant, but he showed how he felt on the court. Stare downs, high energy dunks, and statement games. But years later, Westbrook told reporters there was no beef, just media noise. They faced off dozens of times after the split. Durant's teams won more playoff games. Statistically, both showed up, and every matchup felt like something bigger than basketball. In 2018, sources confirmed they were speaking again. Durant later called Westbrook a brother, even while others like Kendrick Perkins said they weren't really close off the court. The facts are simple. 9 seasons as teammates, 1 finals trip, then a breakup that fueled endless debate. No insults, no public attacks, just a complicated history between 2 stars with the different styles and different destinations. The heat around their rivalry, it burned bright, but never fully boiled over. And time has cooled it into mutual respect, at least publicly. Michael Jordan versus Isaiah Thomas. This one didn't just stay on the court, it followed both players for decades. They faced off 65 times, and Thomas came out ahead in wins, 36-29. Even in the playoffs, Thomas led 12-10. But Jordan still dominated in the box score, averaging over 31 points in their matchups, while Thomas dished out 9 assists per game. The feud really heated up in the late 80s. Thomas's Pistons played physical, hard-nosed basketball, the infamous Jordan rules, designed specifically to wear Jordan down. It worked. Detroit knocked out the Bulls 3 years in a row. But in 1991, Chicago finally broke through and swept the Pistons. What happened next? Thomas and most of his teammates walked off the court without shaking hands. That moment stuck, and that wasn't the only early incident. Back in 1985, rumors spread that Thomas led a freeze-out during Jordan's first All-Star game. Both have denied it, but the story has never gone away. Then came the Dream Team drama. Thomas, one of the league's best point guards, wasn't selected in 1992. Many believe Jordan and others pushed for that. Rod Thorne later said Jordan never directly demanded it, but the tension was obvious. In The Last Dance, Jordan didn't hold back. He called Thomas an a-hole. Thomas fired back and said he'd only reconcile if Jordan apologized. Even in 2025, that sit-down still hasn't happened. This rivalry wasn't just about basketball. Thomas grew up in Chicago, and Jordan became the city's hero. That overlap only deepened the bitterness. And despite all the titles and accolades, this beef still lingers. Kevin Garnett versus Ray Allen. It started with a championship and ended in silence. Back in 2007, Boston's Big Three was born. Garnett, Allen, and Pierce teamed up and won a title in 2008. But 4 years later, Allen left in free agency and signed with the Miami Heat, the team that had just knocked the Celtics out of the playoffs. That decision didn't land well. Garnett said he took it personal. He told reporters he cut Allen off and didn't even have his number anymore. He felt it was betrayal, not just because Allen left, but because he joined a rival. Allen pushed back, saying it was a professional decision. He wanted another shot at a ring, and he got it, winning a second championship with Miami in 2013. From 2012 on, the silence between them spoke volumes. Garnett cropped Allen out of photos. Celtics events went on without Allen invited or mentioned. The beef wasn't loud, but it lasted. Even Allen admitted their personalities clashed in Boston. Small things like pre-game routines created tension. Years passed. Then life happened. Garnett said the death of Kobe Bryant made him rethink holding on to grudges. When Allen showed up to Garnett's jersey retirement, it was a moment people had been waiting for. And Garnett confirmed later, he let it go. No shouting match, no apology tour, just two players who built something historic, fell out, and eventually found a way back to mutual respect. That's the full arc. Champions, rivals, strangers, and finally, teammates, again in spirit. Draymond Green versus Kevin Durant. It was a championship partnership with cracks beneath the surface. Durant joined the Warriors in 2016. He and Green went on to win back-to-back titles in 2017 and 2018, but things shifted fast the next season. On November 12, 2018, the Warriors were tied with the Clippers at the end of regulation. Green grabbed a rebound and pushed the ball up court without passing to Durant, who was calling for it. The play broke down, and cameras caught Durant fuming. What fans didn't see was what happened next. A heated argument in the locker room, one that reportedly went beyond basketball and straight into Durant's looming free agency. The fallout was serious. The Warriors suspended Green for one game without pay for conduct detrimental to the team. That wasn't the only friction. There had been earlier in-game disagreements between the two, including one during a matchup against Memphis the season before. The tension was real and persistent. After the season, Durant left Golden State for Brooklyn. He later said it wasn't just the argument that mattered, it was how the Warriors handled it. No real resolution, no accountability. That's what stuck with him. Green eventually spoke out too. He said the team should have let them resolve it themselves. Years later, both have reflected publicly. Durant admitted there was blame on both sides. Green said he has love for Durant, but their relationship is complex. They won together, they clashed hard, and the way it all unraveled became a turning point. Not just for them, but for the Warriors dynasty as a whole. Allen Iverson versus Larry Brown. It wasn't a rivalry, but it was a storm. Iverson, the number one pick in 1996, was the league's most electric guard. Brown, hired in 1997, was a Hall of Fame coach with a no-nonsense style built on discipline, structure, and practice. You can probably see where this went. From the start, their relationship clashed. Brown wanted defense and order. Iverson wanted freedom and buckets. Practices turned into battlegrounds. Brown publicly called out Iverson for missing them, and Iverson famously responded in a press conference by repeating the word practice over and over. That moment became a meme, but it was rooted in real tension. Iverson was grieving a friend's death, frustrated with the media, and feeling misunderstood. Brown, meanwhile, was trying to keep a young, rebellious team focused. Despite the clashes, they won. In 2001, the Sixers reached the NBA Final. Iverson won MVP. Brown got Coach of the Year. It was proof their chaos had a rhythm, but after that run, cracks deepened. Brown resigned in 2003 and went on to win a title with the Pistons the next season. Years later, both men looked back with respect. Iverson called Brown the best coach in the world. Brown said Iverson taught him how to connect with players who were different from him. They acknowledged they misunderstood each other at times, but never denied each other's greatness. The yelling, the tension, the practice rant, all part of a bigger picture. It was never hate. It was two icons pulling in different directions and somehow dragging a team all the way to the finals. Dennis Rodman versus Karl Malone. This one wasn't your average grudge. It came wrapped in rebounds, trash talk, and a random wrestling match nobody asked for. Rodman, the master of chaos, was all about defense and mental warfare. Malone, the tank in sneakers, just wanted to score buckets and crush souls in the paint. So when the Bulls and Jazz collided in the finals 2 years in a row, these two weren't just clashing. They were circling each other like bumper cars in a parking lot. Rodman got in Malone's face constantly, trying every trick in the book to throw him off. Verbal jabs? Check. Tangles on the floor? You bet. And yeah, the Bulls trusted Rodman to mess with Malone as much as possible, even though Malone was scoring more often than not. Their physical battles became must-watch moments, especially when they crashed to the floor in Game 6 of 1998. That clip gets replayed more than family arguments at Thanksgiving. Then came the plot twist. Pro wrestling. Rodman skipped the Bulls film session during the finals to hang with Hulk Hogan, and by July, he was tag teaming with him in a match against Malone and Diamond Dallas Page. Because sure, Why not fight your NBA nemesis in spandex? Even wilder, Rodman said Malone once dated his sister for 3 years. So yeah, this rivalry had layers. But despite all the noise, both guys admitted they respected each other's game. Rodman was annoying, but effective. Malone was brutal, but consistent. Together, they made the kind of rivalry you don't forget. Not pure hatred, but definitely not hugs and high fives. Kobe Bryant versus Smush Parker. This wasn't a rivalry. It was more like a cold war in sneakers. From 2005 to 2007, they shared a backcourt on the Lakers, but apparently didn't share much else. According to Parker, Kobe never spoke to him, not once. Not during games, not on flights, not in practice. The one time Parker tried to make small talk about football, Kobe reportedly told him to earn some accolades before starting a conversation. Years later, Kobe didn't hold back. In 2012, he called Parker the worst and said he only made the team because the franchise was too cheap to pay for a real point guard. Parker didn't take that lightly. He later called the experience overrated and said Kobe's greatness on the court didn't excuse how he treated people. The vibe, not exactly warm. Parker's issue wasn't with Kobe's game, it was the personality. He said being treated like he didn't exist made him feel small, like he didn't belong. That kind of disrespect hit different when you're logging real minutes next to a future Hall of Famer. Other players, like Gilbert Arenas, offered context. They explained Kobe's expectations weren't just high, they were legendary. If Parker didn't match that drive, Kobe shut the door, literally. Despite all that, there was no physical fight, no off-court blowups, no dramatic reconciliation, just a locked vault of tension, with both guys standing their ground in interviews. Kobe had the rings, Parker had the stories, and somewhere in between sat one of the more unforgettable teammate dynamics in modern NBA history. Two very different players, one very icy locker room. Jimmy Butler versus Karl Anthony Towns. This one didn't stay behind closed doors. It kicked off when they became Timberwolves teammates in 2017, but by the next year, it was boiling over. The famous practice, Butler reportedly ran with the backups and still beat the starters, including Towns, then let the entire gym hear about it. That moment stuck. It turned into the defining image of a team that had talent but zero harmony. Butler asked out soon after. He wanted a trade, and while he said it was about winning, everyone could see the fracture with teammates like Towns was a huge factor. Minnesota sent him to Philadelphia in November. Behind the scenes, it was even messier. Reports said Towns told the front office he couldn't coexist with Butler if something didn't change. That says a lot. Former teammate Jeff Teague later said Butler came into that practice hunting for conflict just to prove a point. Towns has acknowledged it happened, but never dove too deep, often giving a lighter version when asked. Then came the rumors, mostly noise about off-court stuff that Towns shut down as fake. But the real tension? That was about culture and competitiveness. Even after Butler left, the spotlight followed. Whenever they faced off, fans watched for drama. And while they haven't had major run-ins on the court, the edge is still there. Towns has outplayed Butler in some matchups since. But the original conflict still defines how people talk about both of them. This wasn't just about basketball. It was two totally different mentalities that couldn't mesh. Intensity clashing with chill. And the fallout made sure nobody forgot it. Kevin Garnett versus Carmelo Anthony. The night of January 7th, 2013 is when it all popped off. The Celtics were playing the Knicks, and things got heated between Garnett and Melo during the fourth quarter. Both got hit with technical fouls after jawing at each other nonstop. But that wasn't the end. After the final buzzer, Melo didn't head out the normal way. He stormed through the tunnel near the visiting locker room, trying to confront Garnett. Security and New York City police had to step in near the team bus. The league took it seriously and suspended Melo for 1 game. Garnett, no suspension. Melo later said Garnett said something during the game that crossed the line. He never repeated the words, just said it was something a man doesn't say to another man. That's where the infamous Cheerios rumor came in. People started saying Garnett made a comment involving Melo's wife. Garnett denied it flat out later, saying he never mentioned anyone's family and called the story false. Still, the tension was real. Melo said he just wanted to talk things out. He claimed they did, and he held no grudge. Garnett brushed it off as part of the game and kept it moving. No punches, no long-term fallout, just a high-intensity standoff between two stars on rival teams. The Knicks and Celtics were already division rivals. Garnett brought fire, and Melo brought buckets. Put that in Madison Square Garden and mix in trash talk, and you get one of the more memorable NBA flashpoints of the decade. No lasting feud, but for one night, it got personal, and the whole league saw it. Paul Pierce versus LeBron James. This rivalry ran deep through the Eastern Conference for years. They went head-to-head 69 times, and LeBron barely edged it, winning 35-34. Pierce had the edge in regular season games, but when it came to the playoffs, LeBron's teams won 17-13. That playoff success tilted the balance when it mattered most. Stat-wise, LeBron outproduced Pierce nearly every time. He averaged just under 30 points, with 6 rebounds and 6 assists. Pierce, by comparison, put up about 20 points, 5 rebounds, and just under 4 assists per game in their matchups. The numbers show LeBron's impact went beyond scoring. They faced off in at least 5 playoff series, and each one felt like a mini war. The rivalry heated up in the late 2000s, when Boston's Big Three stood in LeBron's way year after year. The 2008 series between the Celtics and Cavaliers went 7 games, and it pushed LeBron to rethink everything about how he competed. Their battles weren't just tactical, they were physical, emotional, and sometimes downright tense. One infamous playoff clash even got LeBron's mom involved from the sideline. The intensity was real. And off the court, Pierce wasn't shy. He's praised LeBron's greatness, but also kept the debate alive in media, constantly weighing in on LeBron's legacy. That's what made this rivalry stand out. It wasn't built on hate, it was built on high-stakes competition, playoff history, and pride. These weren't just two players. They were Eastern Conference gatekeepers for a decade, and the razor-thin head-to-head record proves how closely matched they really were through the height of their careers. Magic Johnson versus Isaiah Thomas. These two started off as close friends, real ones. They greeted each other with a kiss before games, which wasn't about show. It was mutual respect. But when their teams collided in the finals in the late 80s, things started to crack. In 1988, Magic's Lakers beat Isaiah's Pistons in a brutal 7-game series. The next year, Detroit got revenge with a sweep, and the tone of their friendship changed. That tension only got worse. Around the time of Magic's HIV announcement in 1991, he believed Isaiah had helped spread false rumors about his health and sexuality. Isaiah denied it. He said he never said anything about Magic's private life and didn't even know Magic's agent well enough to have that kind of conversation. But the damage was done, and when the Dream Team was announced in 1992, Isaiah was left off. It's long been believed that Magic's issues with him played a role. For years, they didn't talk. Magic said he was hurt. Isaiah felt betrayed by the public accusation. The friendship that once lit up the league had faded into silence. But then, in 2017, they sat down face-to-face on live TV. Magic apologized. Isaiah broke down. They hugged. Years of tension dissolved. Right there on camera. Stat-wise, Magic had the edge in regular season wins, but Isaiah took more playoff games. Both were elite in their own ways. But this rivalry wasn't really about stats. It was about trust, conflict, and finally, reconciliation. It started as the league's most heartwarming friendship, turned bitter, and ended with tears, healing, and 2 legends finally on the same page again. Dwight Howard versus Kobe Bryant. This one had everything: finals history, locker room tension, on-court clashes, and regrets. Back in 2009, Kobe's Lakers beat Dwight's Magic in the finals, 4-1. It was a huge moment. Before that, Dwight had already been dunked on by Kobe as a rookie in 2004. That moment stuck with him. Fast forward to 2012, Howard joins the Lakers in a massive trade. Kobe's intense. Dwight, not thrilled. Howard later admitted he didn't want to join LA in the first place. The season had big names: Kobe, Howard, Nash, Gasol, but it never clicked. Kobe tore his Achilles. The team got swept in the first round, and behind the scenes, not much better. Howard said Kobe barely talked to him, even during a private flight to the All-Star game. He felt misunderstood. Kobe's energy was all business. Dwight wanted support. It didn't mix. Then came the real fireworks. In 2014, when Howard returned with Houston, they got into it on opening night. Dwight threw an elbow. Kobe called him soft. They jawed. Both got technicals. It was clear. The tension hadn't faded. Kobe kept calling Dwight soft in interviews after that. Howard, years later, said he didn't hold a grudge. He said the beef was blown up by fans and media. But he did say that Kobe's coldness influenced his decision to leave the Lakers, and he regretted how it ended. This wasn't a feud built on hatred. It was a clash of 2 totally different mindsets. Kobe wanted blood, rings, and sacrifice. Dwight wanted balance, fun, and respect. In the end, they never found a middle ground, and the basketball world remembers it. Carmelo Anthony versus George Karl. This one wasn't about a single blow-up. It was a slow burn that lasted for years. Melo was Denver's star from 2003. and George Karl coached him from 2005 to 2011. They made the playoffs every season together, but the chemistry, rocky from the start. Melo said their first real interaction had Karl calling him overrated. Not exactly a warm welcome. Karl's criticisms didn't stay behind closed doors. In his book, Furious Joy, he said Melo didn't commit to defense, was tough to coach, and didn't like sharing the spotlight. He even called him a user of people. That wasn't gossip. That came straight from Karl's own writing. He also doubled down in interviews, calling Melo an individualist who preferred scoring to team defense. According to Karl, getting through to Melo was a challenge. Melo's response, dismissive. When asked, he called Karl's comments irrelevant and said he only cared about what teammates and actual coaches thought. Still, he's admitted those comments helped shape how fans and media viewed his defense for years. So even if he wasn't shouting back, the criticism stuck. After Melo was traded to New York in 2011, Karl leaned into his critiques. He posted on social media, called Melo a ball hog, and made sure his perspective was known. Melo, for his part, stayed mostly quiet, saying he never had real beef and didn't think the coaching staff gave him direct feedback at the time. Their partnership lasted 6 years, no championships, just tension, public jabs, and two very different philosophies clashing behind the scenes. It wasn't personal warfare. It was a long, awkward divorce with receipts. Draymond Green versus Rudy Gobert. This rivalry didn't come out of nowhere. It built over years of Defensive Player of the Year debates and competitive tension. It started in 2017 when Green won the award over Gobert. Then Gobert won it multiple times after that, which only fueled comparisons and media debates over who deserved the crown as the league's best defender. And neither guy has ever been the type to shrug things off quietly. But the real turning point came on November 14, 2023. A fight broke out in a Warriors-Timberwolves game. Gobert stepped in to break things up, and Green ran over, wrapped Gobert in a headlock, and dragged him off the court. Both were ejected. The league hit Green with a 5-game suspension for escalating the situation. Gobert, Klay Thompson, and Jaden McDaniels were each fined $25,000. Gobert called Green's behavior clown stuff. Green didn't apologize, but said he needed room for growth. That's the most definitive moment in their rivalry. And it wasn't the first sign of friction. In 2019, Green mocked Gobert for crying after an all-star snub. In 2022, Gobert tweeted, "Insecurity is always loud." During the Warriors' internal drama with Green and Jordan Poole, they met again in the 2025 playoffs, and the narrative picked up right where it left off. Gobert said he respected Green's competitiveness, but stayed focused on his own game. Their styles couldn't be more different. Gobert's a quiet rim protector. Green's an emotional on-ball menace. But that contrast is exactly why this rivalry keeps getting attention. One headlock, a bunch of jabs, and a defensive battle that still gets replayed every time they meet. Isaiah Thomas versus Larry Bird. This was one of those rivalries that was more about basketball than beef. They faced off over 60 times in their careers, and Bird had the edge overall, winning around 40-23. But in the playoffs, they split it right down the middle, 11 wins each. And it wasn't just numbers. Their matchups were physical, strategic, and high stakes. One of the most iconic moments came in the 1987 Eastern Conference Finals, Game 5, final seconds. Isaiah tries to inbound the ball, and Bird steals it, whips it to a teammate, and the Celtics win. That play became a highlight reel staple, and even Isaiah later called it one of the defining plays of their era. Then came the controversy. After a loss to Boston, Isaiah was quoted saying Bird was overrated, but he later explained it wasn't personal. It was about how the media talked about white players versus black players. That moment stirred things up, but it didn't spiral. No fights, no long-term public feud, just two elite competitors doing what they did best. Years later, things circled back. Isaiah coached the Pacers in the early 2000s, and Larry Bird, then the team's president, fired him in 2003. Isaiah later said he felt like he didn't get a real chance, and Bird said it was a decision about team direction, not personal issues. They've both reflected on it publicly. Isaiah even told Bird he thought the firing was a mistake, but neither kept it going as drama. This was a rivalry built on classic games, playoff tension, and a few sharp words, but always grounded in mutual respect and high-level basketball. Nothing bitter, just basketball history. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.